Chapter 1811. For Han Fei, even if he couldn't win, he had to win in terms of momentum. Regardless of whether he could win or not, he had to give her some harsh words first. Besides, Feng Xinlan didn't dare to really fight. After all, this was the sky above the heavenly treasure city. If they really fought, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, under Qiu Yueming's repeated scolding, Feng Xinlan finally stopped. But Han Fei was still clamoring after he stopped. He didn't want to owe others a favor. He was very satisfied with what happened today. No matter what the relationship between Lu Li and his mother was, after the new generation replaced the old, the yin-yang heaven couldn't be owed a favor casually. Qiu Yueming said coldly, "Don't go too far. You keep saying Palace Master's name, but you need to have the qualifications to do so." "Ha ha," Han Fei laughed. "She'll know whether I'm qualified or not when she comes back." With a swish, Han Fei retreated from the void, and his voice was still echoing. "Remember, the Feng family has used up the favor I owe Lu Li." Feng Xinlan secretly thought, "Not good. The favor this person said must be very important. This person came to pick a fight with her in such a big way, but he didn't ask for compensation. For this favor, she was afraid." However, as soon as Han Fei finished speaking, he had appeared in the outside world. If she compensated, it would be a disgrace to the Feng family. The rumors about the Feng family in the heavenly treasure city would probably disappear. Xia Xiaochan was standing next to Yin, feeling that the atmosphere was subtle. As if to start a topic, Xia Xiaochan said, "Yin, do you want to know your brother's embarrassing stories when he was a child?" "Huh?" Yin was stunned. Why did she mention this? However, she was really curious. What was brother like before? Not to mention Yin, even Xianfeng was curious. Xia Xiaochan said, "When I first met him, he was only a fishing master, and his spiritual heritage was only level 3. Compared to your talent, it's far too lacking." Xia Xiaochan had just started, and she hadn't finished her sentence yet. With a swish, Han Fei broke out of the void and looked at Xia Xiaochan speechlessly. "Hey, I'm just going to fight. Can we not talk about this?" Xia Xiaochan was speechless. "Why did you go so fast?" Xianfeng shook her head slightly. "It's fine as long as you don't owe me any favors." Han Fei grinned. "Of course." Behind him, Feng Xinlan and Qiu Yueming also broke through the void. Qiu Yueming shouted, "How can Feng Xinlan replace the Glaze Lord?" Han Fei sneered without looking back. "The Feng family belongs to the glass sky. If the Feng clan makes a mistake, it's Liuli's mistake." "Feng Xinlan, you've already killed 2 people from my Feng clan. What's the meaning of this? The 2 of them have done all kinds of evil and deserve to die. They don't deserve to be used as bargaining chips." Before the 2 of them could refute, Han Fei said, "The grudge has been settled. I'm leaving. Are you 2 going to stop me?" Qiu Yueming, "Why don't you wait for the Lord of Glaze to return?" Han Fei sneered. "She's not an old friend. Why are you waiting for her? Just because I'm not making a move now doesn't mean I'm easy to talk to. Don't talk about those useless things. Why don't you let me try? Otherwise, I'll be leaving." Then, Han Fei looked at Xianfeng. The 2 of them looked at each other and left with Xia Xiaochan and Yin. Qiu Yueming and Feng Xinlan wanted to stop them, but once they did, there would be a fierce battle. Qiu Yueming sighed gloomily. "The Feng family, hurry up and give an explanation to the outside world to put an end to this matter as soon as possible. I've already informed Lu Li to come back. We seem to have been tricked." Feng Xinlan's face was dark. It was useless to say anything else. They could only wait for Lu Li to come back and preside over the situation. Half a day later, when Liu Li returned, although the battle had long since ended, she could still learn some things from many people with a sweep of her divine sense. Lu Li's perception scanned the Feng family and saw Qiu Yueming and Feng Xinlan were both there. She immediately said, "Come to see me." After a moment, Feng Xinlan said, "This should be done by the 2 bastards of the Feng family, but everything happened too fast, and that kid was too domineering and killed them on the spot. I didn't know his real intention immediately." Qiu Yueming said, "Lu Li, that kid, and that Granny Feng, who are they? What's the secret behind them?" After listening to the 2, Lu Li said calmly, "You want to return the favor just like that? Dream on, Qiu Yueming said. Luli, is this favor very important? Luli said indifferently, at least not so cheap. Feng Xinlan heard this and thought, I was tricked. It was also that kid's fault. His attitude at that time was too unyielding, and he was provoked. Feng Xinlan said, Luli, who are they? Luli said slowly, the one who came today should be the current master of Yin-Yang Sky. Granny Feng, Xian Feng of the Witch Pirates. Han Yin'er, Han Guanshu, and Jiang Lingxian's daughter. This, Qiu Yueming and Feng Xinlan were shocked. Yin-Yang Sky, Xian Feng? Qiu Yueming was shocked. Didn't Yin-Yang Sky disappear 80,000 years ago? Are they coming back? Feng Xinlan thought, do they have the confidence to come back? Luli said, too many people have forgotten the true reason we exist in the chaotic ocean since the degenerate era. If someone leaves, they will definitely return. You don't have to worry about this. Xinlan, it's best not to make enemies. Feng Xinlan was silent for a moment. I'll wait and see how that kid will come back. Luli shook her head and thought, there's still a lot of things you don't know. Lu Ran and Mu, she were discussing the Feng family. Mu, she said, what happened in the Feng family can't be caused by a half-monarch. They said that the half-monarch of the Feng family was deducing a great art. It's obviously a lie. Lu Ran shrugged. Isn't that obvious? Your master has already made a move, which means it's for the ordinary people to hear. But don't ask about it. There's nothing to ask. What if your master has a conflict with the Feng family? Can you still fight the Feng family? They were chatting when they heard a voice. Lu Ran, Mu Shi, come see me. Lu Ran and Mu, she looked at each other in surprise. Palace Master Liuli? In the sea region outside the glass sky, on a certain route in the fog, a big blue ship was sailing on the sea. From time to time, it would perform a void teleportation. Finally, after 2 hours, this kind of void teleportation stopped. After a while on the deck, Han Fei controlled the fishing rod with the power of his soul and caught a few low-level lobsters casually. Xia Xiaochan was next to him, fiddling with the barbecue grill. From time to time, she also waved the fishing rod in the sea to find some low-level prawns, conches, and mantis shrimp. Ina was standing far away, looking curiously at Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei, who were busy. Han Fei said, Ina, you don't know me? I thought you knew me. Seeing that Ina didn't speak, Han Fei smiled and said, everyone has a yin soul and a yang soul. It's the yang soul that supports you in your body, but you still lack a yin soul. She is waiting for me to take you back. In this way, the yin and yang souls will become one, and you can break through to the peak of Law Enforcer realm. With the strength you have accumulated over the years, the Explorer realm should be a very fast transition for you. Hearing what Han Fei said, Yin frowned. Yin soul? Han Fei chuckled. With a thought from him, an extremely complicated array slowly took shape on the hull, which was exactly a small heaven and earth natural array. Han Fei said, the Tao of Yin and Yang oppose each other, unify, and nourish each other. Just like the heaven and earth natural array, one enters and one goes out. If I'm not wrong, in your case, you can only enter and not go out. Therefore, you dare not absorb spiritual energy, but can only quickly release the power that has been gathered in your body. Only in this way can you sustain your life. This was very convincing. She couldn't help but seek her teacher's approval, but her teacher was not on the deck. Ina bit the bullet and asked, where is the Yin soul? Han Fei said with a smile, in the Yin-Yang heaven. Ina asked, didn't you say that the Yin-Yang heaven disappeared for 80,000 years? Han Fei said, just because it disappeared doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If there is a way to disappear, there is a way to return. It's a bit difficult, but haven't I reappeared in the chaotic ocean? At this moment, a woman in green with cold eyebrows and eyes opened the cabin. Ina turned around and was immediately dumbfounded. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Who else could it be if not Xian Feng? Xian Feng said, silly girl, I'm a king. How can I look like an old woman? Chilla, a large amount of seasoning was poured into the oil pot, bursting out an alluring fragrance. When the lobster meat was put into the pot, the sizzling sound made everyone swallow their saliva. Han Fei raised his head and said, "Nice to meet you, Senior Xianfeng." Xianfeng smiled faintly. "Why didn't you greet me before?" Han Fei said, "It's our first time meeting." Xianfeng didn't argue with Han Fei. She said, "What happened to the Yin-Yang heaven? Are the four of them still alive?" Han Fei knew who Xianfeng was talking about. He said, "The master of the Waterwood Palace and the master of the Golden Crow Palace died long ago. Although my mother and father are still alive, they are not in good condition." At this moment, Han Fei looked at and said, "Your father is Han Guanshu, the master of the 9 palaces. Your mother is Jiang Linxian, the former master of the Yin-Yang heaven. This is a secret that I, your brother, spent a long time to find out. You won't be able to see them when you go back this time, because I'm not strong enough. But should you call me brother now?" Iner opened her mouth and finally lowered her head, saying in a very low voice, "Brother." Chapter 18:12. Han Fei laughed and said, "Come on, have a taste of your brother's cooking." As the saying went, more haste, less speed. Iner was unfamiliar with him, even though she called him brother. When Iner touched the hot pot for the first time, she was completely fascinated. Not to mention Iner, even Xianfeng looked at Han Fei in astonishment. This was a completely different concept from the previous domineering master of the Immortal Palace. Xianfeng couldn't help but remember that Pearl and Long Wu once said that this guy was a master chef and was known as the invincible chef in the Chaotic Ocean. In the past, she just thought that Pearl and Long Wu were talking nonsense. But now it seemed that it was true. Han Fei asked, "Iner, is it delicious?" Iner nodded. "Yes." Han Fei asked, "Do you want to eat it every day?" Iner tilted her head and glanced at Han Fei, thinking, this brother looks like a bad guy who abducts children. Xia Xiaochan pinched Han Fei's waist and said to him via voice transmission, "What are you talking about? Let's eat." Han Fei. After the meal, Han Fei said, "Senior Xianfeng, since Iner's spiritual heritage is too high level, why didn't you seal this power at the beginning?" Xianfeng shook her head slightly. "Why not use the power to wash the body repeatedly? You should have seen that Iner's physique is extremely strong." Han Fei nodded slightly. Although his physique was not as good as his, it was indeed much stronger than that of his peers. Han Fei said, "That's good, but this way of improving the physique will eventually leave some impure power in Iner's body. Although Iner's physique looks strong now, there's still a lot of room for improvement." "Oh," Xianfeng said in surprise. "If it's a body refining technique, Iner has probably passed that period now. If you want to completely rebuild your foundation, you have to abolish your cultivation and start over again. But Iner, with your heavenly heritage talent, even if you recultivate, it will be much faster." Han Fei shook his head. "No need to recultivate." Xianfeng was surprised. "No need to recultivate? Do you want to start cultivating now?" Now, Iner has been suppressing it for a long time. If he's not careful, he'll have to undergo tribulation. Han Fei said, "I have a great technique. It's not the best in the entire Chaotic Ocean, but it's definitely in the top 3. This technique could remove impurities from the body. Based on Iner's current situation, I'm afraid that after the impurities are completely removed, his strength might even be reduced to that of an early-stage law enforcer." Xianfeng's eyes widened. How could there be such a powerful technique? With this technique, even in the entire Chaotic Azure Sea, it would be rank number 1. There would be no such thing as top 3. Han Fei smiled and said, "Iner, relax." Iner did not dare to be negligent. Now, in her eyes, Han Fei was a super powerful existence. She was still a little confused. She couldn't imagine that her brother was the master of the Immortal Palace, and that her mother and father were also masters of the Immortal Palace. All of this happened too suddenly. In the past, she had asked her teacher about it. However, her teacher never told her. He only told her to wait. Perhaps she would know the answer if she said wait. How long do I have to wait? The teacher said she didn't know either. Iner still remembered that when she first asked this question, she was still a child less than 10 years old. Now it had been more than 50 years, and she finally got the answer. As soon as Iner relaxed a little, she saw Han Fei pointing a finger between her eyebrows. At this point, the golden light shone brightly. After a burst of multicolored light, Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan and said, "Girl, relax your mind too." "Me?" Xia Xiaochan was taken aback and wondered, "Is this body refining technique still useful to me?" Han Fei smiled and said, "What do you think? This technique can be practiced at any level. Just take it." Xia Xiaochan was confident in Han Fei, so she didn't resist. As for the pure mystic body, Han Fei didn't intend to keep a secret. In Han Fei's view, this great technique was just a transition after all. If he wanted to now, he could immediately spend 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy to deduce it. However, this body refining technique was enough for the time being. Because the body refining technique deduced may not have any universal characteristics of any realm. For example, the indestructible overlord body eventually became the grand mystic body. Although it ranked high, the cultivation conditions were simply too harsh. Now that Han Fei had the pure mystic body, he was going to pass this technique to the Thug Academy. At that time, the disciples of the Thug Academy would all be trained into peerless heavenly talents. In the future, when we fight in the chaotic ocean, we will also have people. Xian Feng wondered, "You're just going to pass on this so-called #1 body refining technique in the chaotic ocean?" Han Fei smiled faintly. The chaotic ocean is still too small. Who here has seen it in the outside world? It's just a body refining technique. If my sister and my wife don't pass it on, who else can I pass it on to? At that moment, Han Fei's arrogant temperament appeared again. Xian Feng paused for a moment and then said, "The Avenger has already been registered in the Martial Emperor's city. With 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures, many people are paying attention to you." Han Fei said disdainfully, "Where I am, the Avenger will be." Xian Feng said, "Show me the supreme yin-yang wheel and the 9 palace fate ruler." "Huh?" Xian Feng said, "Although I already believe that you are the son of the palace master and the 9 palace master, I still have to see it thoroughly. No matter how strong your attainments in arrays are, or how much you know about the yin-yang heaven, you still have to see it." Han Fei raised his hand, and the 9 palace fate ruler appeared in his hand. The ruler moved and fell on the ping hexagram. Then, with a thought from Han Fei, Little Black and Little White appeared, and he said, "Since you know the yin-yang heavens so well, you should know them, right?" Xian Feng's eyes became hot. Twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. Han Fei asked, "What is Yin-Er's spiritual beast?" Xian Feng shook her head slightly. "I don't know why, but it hasn't been awakened until now." Han Fei frowned slightly. He wasn't sure. Maybe it was slightly different from him and needed to wait for his Yin soul and Yang soul to merge into one before it could be awakened. Han Fei didn't dwell on this question. With a thought from Han Fei, the small yin-yang wheel appeared beside him, but he didn't use the supreme yin-yang wheel because it was not necessary. Han Fei said, "If you hadn't taken care of Yin-Er for so many years, I wouldn't have shown you so much." Xian Feng said, "One last thing. I want to know, why is Yin missing Yin's soul?" Han Fei tilted his head and looked at Xian Feng. "I also want to ask, why did Yin-Er appear in the glass sky? Why are you looking after her?" Xian Feng was surprised. "You don't know?" Han Fei said, "I don't know at all." Xian Feng said, "Hundreds of years ago, I faintly heard a call. In the void, I could occasionally hear the palace master's call, but it was not very clear. Until one day, a projection of the 9 palace master appeared in front of me with Yin-Er. We only had time to say a few words, and the projection of the 9 palace master disappeared." Han Fei asked, "What did he say?" Xian Feng said, "He said to wait. Take care of Yin-Er. If it's inconvenient, you can go to the glass sky to seek shelter." Xian Feng continued, "The witch pirates wander on the sea all year round. I want to take Yin-Er with me. But later, I found that Yin-Er was very talented and not an ordinary person at all. However, her soul was greatly damaged and she needed to rest, so she went to the glass sky to seek shelter." Han Fei was slightly relieved. As long as she didn't go to the glass sky at the beginning, it's fine. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can't return the favor. Xian Feng asked, "Where's the palace master? Where's the 9 palace master?" Han Fei shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe she is in the river of time, but this is not something we should think about now. When Xianfeng heard the river of time, the corners of her mouth twitched. That's really not something we should think about. That damn place is beyond the reach of mortals. Even I can only take a glimpse of time at most. But to jump into time? That's almost no different from courting death. Xianfeng asked, since saving the palace master is not something we should consider. What is? Han Fei grinned. Huh. How long has the 36 black heavens been controlled by these people from the Grand Purity Palace? I'm afraid they have all lost their way. Xianfeng's heart did a flip. What do you mean? Han Fei said, Senior Xianfeng, the witch pirates are still the witch pirates. The Avenger is still the Avenger. We still need to wait for the yin-yang heaven to return. I still need time to grow. Xianfeng asked, what do you want to grow? Han Fei asked, do you want to go out of the chaotic ocean and have a look? Xianfeng narrowed her eyes, but Han Fei sneered. Do you think my goal is the 36 black heavens? No, no, no. The moment I comprehended my Taoist heart, my goal was no longer the 36 black heavens. Even if I know there are kings and even emperors here, so what? A group of clowns, after 100,000 years, are still immersed in the chaotic ocean. They don't know how long the world is outside. At that moment, Han Fei looked like a real king. Compared to all the kings that Xianfeng had met, he looked more like a king. Han Fei said indifferently, today's chaotic ocean is a mess. Except for the higher spiritual energy, more resources, and bigger space, there is nothing remarkable about it. The so-called kings are kings, to put it nicely, but to put it bluntly, they are a group of pioneer sea realm cultivators. They are strong now, but it doesn't mean they will always be strong. It's not a matter of hatred between the yin-yang heaven and these people, but the reunification of mankind. The reason why Han Fei had this kind of emotion was not because Jiang Linxian said she wanted him to find a way to unify the 36 immortal palaces. It was because after seeing these people, he only felt that a group of strong people ruled a group of weak people. Even so, they were divided into inner and outer domains, only for the imperial palace. An imperial palace had blocked these people for 100,000 years. To be honest, Han Fei didn't like this pattern. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1813. While chatting with Xianfeng, Xia Xiaochan had quickly comprehended the cultivation method of the void profound body and slowly woke up. Seeing this, Xianfeng stopped the discussion and asked, are you going back to the yin-yang heaven? Han Fei shook his head. Before returning to the yin-yang heaven, there are still some things I need to deal with. Let's go to the Taishan heaven first. Taishan heaven? Xianfeng was a little surprised, and then she realized what he meant. You want to steal books? Han Fei didn't know what to say. How could she guess that? I only said one name. Xianfeng said, you have mastered the Gemini divine technique, and you have chosen to go to Taishan heaven. Anyone can guess that. Why? Can't I steal it? Xianfeng replied, it's not that I can't steal them, but as far as I know, there are almost no books in Taishan heaven that can be stolen. The Taishan Heaven Academy is a place for the strong to cultivate, and there should be a king there. However, Xianfeng wasn't sure either. Han Fei had the Gemini divine technique, after all. Even if he couldn't steal it, it wouldn't harm his life. It didn't seem like a big problem. Han Fei said, I still have a lot of things to do in the chaotic ocean. The Demonist pirates were still the Demonist pirates. From today onwards, you and I can pretend that we don't know each other. Give me a flight route to Taishan Heaven and a flight route to Martial Emperor's city nearby, and we can go our separate ways. Of course, I'll take Ener with me. Han Fei and Xianfeng were not familiar with each other. Even if they were related to the yin-yang heaven, there was no need for them to work together now. Besides, if there were too many people, it would affect his ability to move around, which would be inconvenient. Xianfeng looked at Han Fei thoughtfully. When will the yin-yang heaven return? Han Fei shook his head slightly. Then you'll have to wait and see when I can rival them. Han Fei believed that his strength was extraordinary. If he became a sea pioneer king in the future, his strength would increase several times. Even in this chaotic ocean, there would be very few people who could defeat him. However, No matter how strong one person was, he was not as strong as so many monarchs, and even monarchs in the chaotic Azure Sea. Therefore, Han Fei was not invincible. If the yin yang heaven were to appear again, the commotion it would cause would naturally not be small. It was impossible for him and Mu Wuhua to fend off the various kings of the chaotic vast sea. In fact, they couldn't even withstand the attack of two pirate groups. Xian Feng asked again, "Can we return to the yin yang heaven?" Han Fei shook his head. "That's unnecessary." The savage abyss had limited resources and sparse spirit energy. It could not compare to the chaotic Azure Sea in all aspects. If the demonist pirates were truly thinking for the sake of the yin-yang heaven, then they would do their best to preserve their strength. When I return, there will be a storm of blood. Xiao Xiaochan had already woken up at this time. Listening to the conversation between Han Fei and Xian Feng, she thought to herself, what Han Fei didn't mention is the hidden danger of the mermaid royal family. If he left by force, Chen Huangdian wouldn't be an idiot. He would find out sooner or later. At that time, the spearhead would definitely be pointed at Han Fei. That was why Han Fei said he needed more power. Xian Feng threw a jade slip to Han Fei and said, "The truth can't be contained in the paper. Since you have returned, you have shown yourself in the glazed sky. In that case, the news would eventually spread. The news that yin-yang heaven was about to appear couldn't be hidden for long in the chaotic Azure Sea. Now that you are the master of yin-yang heaven, you have to bear this responsibility." Han Fei grinned and didn't speak. Counter soldiers with arms and water with earth. From the moment that the Snow Maidens had discovered his identity, he had already been prepared for the yin-yang heaven to be exposed. Half a day later, when Iner woke up, Xian Feng and Iner talked for a long time in the cabin, and then the two parted ways. When the pirate flag of the Avenger was raised, Xian Feng's heart was slightly gloomy. If possible, she really didn't want to see the master of the yin-yang heaven appear in the chaotic Azure Sea in such a form. However, Han Fei's strength and grand vision gave her hope again. She decided to wait and see. For the time being, she would gather all the forces of the witch pirates. She had kept a low profile for too long. It was time to really plunder. Iner said goodbye to Xian Feng with tears in her eyes. When there was only Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan on the ship, she was too tense and restrained. Han Fei summoned Yen immediately. "Brother." When Yen came out, there was a little squirrel on her head and a big white rabbit in her arms. Yen said happily, "Brother, I went to Sister Water Luster's place today to see the little crabs. The little crabs are moving." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Has the king crab begun to recover? However, this was not what Han Fei needed to care about now. He said, "Yen, this is my sister Iner. Iner, this is the son of an old friend of mine, Yen. I guess you two can play together. Let's get to know each other." Han was taken aback for a moment, thinking another sister popped up, and Yen had already run over. "Sister Iner, this is the big white rabbit. It's so soft." Han Iner saw Yen kick the big white rabbit into her arms. This was the first time she had seen such a magical creature. It was so cute. The rabbit was not afraid of strangers and kept rubbing in Iner's arms. Han Iner asked, What is this?" Yen said, "Rabbit. Sister Iner, don't you even know a rabbit?" Yen turned her head. "Brother, let's take Sister Iner to the painting, okay?" Han Fei nodded slightly and looked at Iner. "Relax. You and Yen go to the small world to have a look. Your brother will go to the Taishan heaven and the martial emperor's city. In the meantime, they might have to delay for a few days. In the small world, the spiritual energy is thin, which will make you feel more comfortable." When the mountains and rivers appeared, Iner and Yen went to the sea-quelling painting together. Han Fei heaved a sigh of relief. "Are we just going to let them stay in the sea-quelling painting? Is it really okay?" Han Fei said, "With Xiao Sei and the old guys like Tree Spirit, it won't be a big problem. Otherwise, Iner and I aren't familiar with each other, so she would be very reserved. When we return to the yin-yang heaven, we'll put them both into the Thug Academy." Thinking about it, it would probably take a while for them to understand this world. After all, Teacher wondering you and the others are better at teaching students than we are. When Ener went to the sea-quelling painting, Han Fei immediately swept the route left by Xian Feng, quickly set the sail, and moved towards the Taishan heaven. He just fought in the glass sky. When glass sky went back, it would know that someone from the Yin-Yang heaven had come. The glass sky was also on good terms with the Taishan heaven, the immeasurable heaven, and the Sword God Palace. Maybe one day they would tell the other sects about this. Therefore, he had to go to the Taishan heaven as soon as possible. According to the route given by Xian Feng, Han Fei roughly judged these routes. The routes were always twisted. Because of the twists and turns, it was certain that they took a lot of detours. As for why they took detours, it probably had something to do with some dangerous creatures on this route. Powerful creatures also had a sense of territory, and the existence of the route was mainly to avoid these marine creatures with huge territories. Of course, there should be no lack of creatures suddenly attacking the route. But theoretically speaking, the powerful sea creatures might not run out of their own territory and go to other places to visit. Therefore, Han Fei didn't encounter any danger along the way. The only thing he encountered was a huge octopus halfway, whose strength had reached the peak level of the venerable realm. It was conceivable that this big octopus became Han Fei's target of absorption and finally became a food ingredient. Until 3 days later, Han Fei came to the sea near the Taishan heaven through these twists and turns on the route map. The Taishan heaven was extremely complicated, and the path of cultivation was also extremely complicated. Here, there were tens of thousands of academies of all sizes. Anyway, there were all kinds of things they wanted to learn. Of course, among these academies, there would be some differences in quality and level. For example, some schools had venerables, while some schools might have the strongest explorers. Of course, in the Taishan heaven, there was a place recognized as the strongest, and that was the academy. The name of the academy was the best in the 36 Xiantian heavens, and it was said to contain tens of millions of classics in the world. In the academy, there were all kinds of magical techniques and combat skills. Taishan heaven, Han Tian city, holy land of Book Mountain. When Han Fei came to this place, he felt uncomfortable. He had been wandering around here for a day and even read the memories of 2 people in a row, so he knew a lot about the Taishan heaven. But what made Han Fei speechless was that this academy was on this Book Mountain. And the Book Mountain itself was an array, with many wonderful array diagrams inlaid in it. This was one of them. Secondly, this Book Mountain had very few disciples. It was said that in the entire Book Mountain, there were less than 100 inner disciples and less than 1,000 outer disciples. The outer disciples couldn't go to the inner disciples, so this Book Mountain was desolate all year round, and no one climbed it. Glancing at the peak that soared into the sky, Han Fei thought to himself, how many arrays are waiting for me along the way? Even if I'm a master of arrays, how can I sneak in without knowing anything about the arrays? That's impossible. After a day's delay, Han Fei finally couldn't sit still. He said, if these people don't come out all year round, how can I wait here for a few years? No, I have to lure them out. Old Yuan said, those who can be in this academy are probably not weak. How much noise do you have to make to lure them out? Han Fei thought, should I touch the restriction of this Book Mountain and take the initiative to attract the attention of the academy? When they send someone to investigate, I can quietly follow them in. Just as Han Fei was about to implement this plan, he suddenly saw a figure above the Book Mountain, breaking through the restriction of the Book Mountain and coming out. When Han Fei took a closer look, who else could it be but Song Kaiyuan? Han Fei was overjoyed. God is really helping me. Second chapter. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1814. Han Fei was worried that he wouldn't be able to enter the academy, but then Song Kaiyuan came out. Han Fei's impression of Song Kaiyuan was that he looked like a scholar and had a gentle temperament. He was more like a commander with a wide range of knowledge. Before, in the land of King Death, the heavenly talents of the Grand Mystery Palace, the Glaze Palace, and the other 4 palaces were actually under this guy's command. Later, in the battle between Mu Shui Cixi and Mu Shi, Mu Shui Cixi was also constantly commanding Mu Shi to fight. Perhaps this was a major advantage of the grand mystery heaven. Only after reading many battle techniques and cultivation methods, and knowing them like the back of one's hand, could one possess such commanding ability. At this moment, Song Kaiyuan went out. Han Fei certainly wouldn't let him go. With a thought, he chased after him. After a while, on a high-level island in the Grand Mystery Heaven, there should be a high-standard reception port. Here, there were several half-king experts. At this moment, they were receiving a large ship that had just arrived. Han Fei followed Song Kaiyuan all the way to this place. As soon as he saw the ship, he couldn't help but wonder who was standing on the ship. Wasn't that Lu Ran and Mu Shi? Han Fei was speechless. He had just come from the Glaze Heaven, but these two arrived soon after. If he didn't know better, he would think that he was being followed. Song Kaiyuan said, "Junior sister Lu Ran, junior sister Mu Shi, you're here?" Lu Ran said, "Brother Song, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. I didn't expect that you would come to pick us up in person. Where's Cece?" Song Kaiyuan said with a smile, "That girl is not good at learning. She was punished to read books in the Sutra Tower." Huh? Reading books again? Mu Shi couldn't help but shrink her head, seeming to sympathize with her good sister. Song Kaiyuan said, "It's okay. She's used to being punished. Later, when you go over, that girl will definitely sneak out, but don't go in. But don't go inside. If she can't even endure for half a month, her punishment will definitely be heavier next time." Lu Ran shook her head. "I really don't understand what's wrong with your academy. Cece is so smart, but she is punished to read books? If it were the Glaze Heaven, I'm afraid I would have to live in the Sutra Tower." Song Kaiyuan smiled and said, "If the master of the Glaze Heaven was willing, you would have been in the academy." Mu Shi said, "Then why did we come here?" Song Kaiyuan said, "I'm not too sure about that. I only know that it has something to do with Martial Emperor's city. Let's wait. Li Kaitian and Jian Hui should be on their way. We'll arrive in half a day at most." Han Fei was intrigued. Something related to the Martial Emperor's city? What a coincidence. He was really prepared to go to Martial Emperor's city. If they wanted to go, he could even hitch a ride with them. Half a day later, Li Kaitian and Jian Hui arrived at the same time. Before he got off the boat, he heard Li Kaitian whining, "I really don't know. What's so urgent? I've only just returned home, and I haven't even had a chance to rest yet. I was just about to go into seclusion for half a year, but before I could even sit down properly, I was kicked out." Jian Hui hugged his sword and said calmly, "What are you here for?" Song Kaiyuan said, "Let's talk about it when we get to the academy. After all, since you're here as guests, my academy has to receive you, right?" Han Fei had already possessed Song Kaiyuan's body, so he naturally followed everyone back to the academy. When they came to the foot of the Book Mountain, Song Kaiyuan led everyone to fly into the Book Mountain. Wherever they passed, the fog receded and the light dissipated. The array seemed to have ignored them. Han Fei was paying attention to these arrays and immediately found that they were extremely complicated, somewhat similar to the method he used to create the maze trial in the Thousand Star City. Li Kaitian said, "Old Song, there are only a few dozen of you living in this Book Mountain. What's the point of hiding and hiding? It's the same thing every time you come back. If you fall halfway up the mountain, I can't even tell which way is north, south, east, and west." Lu Ran said, "Just shut up. In the first place, he didn't create this mountain of books for a big guy like you. If they only accepted people like you, their academy would have been full." Li Kaitian chuckled. "Hey, it's not me who arranged this. These people were very close. Judging from the degree of their relationship, the relationship between the four palaces should be quite close. At least, the heavenly talents were very familiar with each other." After a while, they crossed the Book Mountain array and saw a fairyland on Earth. Here, the spiritual energy was more than 3 times richer than in the outside world. Han Fei saw big birds flying in fright, insects jumping in the woods, waterfalls, mountain springs, grass ponds, lotus flowers, and lush forests. Of course, these were not important. What was important was that in some woods, between the sparse houses, a tower thousands of meters high stood among them. No matter how the other scenery of the academy was, anyone who came to the academy for the first time would be attracted by this tower. They all knew that this should be the Sutra Tower of the Academy. Li Kaitian clicked his tongue and said, "Every time I see the Sutra Tower, I can't help but want to go in and take a look. Hey, old Song, can you talk to your senior uncle and let us go in and explore it?" Song Kaiyuan smiled and said, "If you want to find a few books to read, I can let you enter the Sutra Tower. You all want to explore the books, but I can't make the decision. If you want to ask, you can look for my master." Li Kaitian shrugged. "Forget it. My luck has always been bad. It had been 3 times, and each time was worse than the last. Forget it, forget it. I won't ask for it." Han Fei listened to everyone's words and realized that this Sutra Tower was actually composed of 2 parts. The other part was the normal collection of books. There were all kinds of scrolls, battle skills, and countless cultivation techniques here. The other part was something he had to explore on his own. What he got was a complete accident. After entering this place, Han Fei didn't probe with his perception. At the same time, he didn't let the old tortoise investigate. As a famous immortal palace in the inner region, one could not underestimate the kings here. Facts prove that although the old turtle could be said to be knowledgeable and had experienced a long period of depravity, however, his strength was not that exaggerated. If its original body was still here, it might be able to dominate an area and easily sweep through the immortal palace. But the key point was that the old turtle only had one spirit now. Han Fei dared not take the risk. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at a lake that was as smooth as a mirror. Behind this lake was the Sutra Tower. There was a person on the lake, dressed in white, standing on the lake with one foot, holding a scroll in his hand, as if he hadn't heard the arrival of Song, Kaiyuan, and the others. When they saw this person, everyone suddenly slowed down a lot. Song Kaiyuan cupped his hands to the man and said, "Senior uncle, everyone is here." The man didn't move his eyes away from the page, but gently turned a page. After looking at it for a while, he slowly said, "All of you are impetuous. Learn from me and stand still for a day." Everyone, Li Kaiyuan and Lu Ran, looked at each other and thought, "I knew he would say this. Every time I see the senior uncle, he says the same thing. I have to stand for a day before I can do anything else. Senior uncle, I don't want to read books. I want to stand as punishment." Suddenly, everyone raised their heads and looked at the Sutra Tower. However, at a small window 100 meters above the ground, someone's head could be seen sticking to the window and shouting. Who else could that person be but Mushue Sisi? The man in white slightly frowned. "Impolite. Shut up." The man in white stretched out his hand and squeezed, and Mushue Sisi's mouth was closed. She could only stammer, but couldn't say anything. Han Fei was intrigued. Damn it, is there a window in the Sutra Tower? His first thought was that he could crawl in, but on second thought, that's not right. This kind of pagoda couldn't have no barriers. He was afraid that once he entered through the window, he would immediately trigger the restriction. However, Mushue Sisi, whose mouth was sealed, was still gesticulating. Suddenly, Mushue Sisi bowed to the man in white and said, "Master Thief King, why don't I go to be punished with Sisi?" The man in white looked up at Mu Shi and snorted. "You have very poor willpower. Go to the tower and copy the Calming Glaze Sutra 10 times. Han Fei was stunned. Who the hell is this? I'm not your disciple, but you're really good at punishing me? However, why did this punishment feel like special treatment? Han Fei immediately and quietly touched Mushi's body. Mushi secretly stuck out her tongue and smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Master Thief." Then Mushi ran to the Sutra Tower. It seemed that she was familiar with the way. When Mushi entered the tower, she stepped on 7 or 8 arrays in a row and then went into a passage about 20 meters long at the bottom. At the end of the passage, there was a stone door which opened with a push. Mushi passed 6 stone doors in a row as if she were going home before she came to the real Sutra Tower. Han Fei was dumbfounded when he saw it. The entire inner circumference of the Sutra Tower was full of bookshelves. Not only were there bookshelves on the wall of the tower, but in the middle of the tower, there was a pillar that seemed to lead to the top of the tower. Outside this circle of pillars, there were also layers of bookshelves. This was just the most basic structure of the bookshelves inside and outside. Between them, there were some bookshelves floating in the air. Most of them were in a semi-arc, flying in the air. There were thousands of them. Han Fei reckoned that there were at least 1,000,000 books in this collection. Oh my God! Han Fei had known that there were many books in the Taishan heaven, but he didn't expect there to be so many. But when he thought about how 100,000 years had passed since the end of days, he couldn't help but sigh. It seemed reasonable to have more books. Mu Shi jumped up, rose 100 meters into the air, and hugged Mu Shui Cici. The two immediately communicated via voice transmission. Mu Shui Cici said, "Cici, help me teach that bastard senior brother a lesson later. It's all his fault. Uncle Thief King thinks I'm not smart again." Mu Shi seemed to have been used to this scene and immediately said, "You are not as smart as senior brother Song. Okay, copy it. Half each. When you finish, let's play book chess." Okay. Han Fei was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect it to be so easy to sneak in. He thought it would be difficult, but it turned out that stealing books was a piece of cake for him. The third chapter. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1815. Although Mu Shui Cici said that she was not liked by her junior uncle, she was actually spoiled. Otherwise, how could a half-king act like a spoiled child in front of king? How could you find helpers? When Mu Shui Cici and Mu Shi grabbed paper and pens and began to copy the book, Han Fei looked at the top of the tower. He didn't expect that he would come to the Sutra Tower so easily. Xian Feng also told him that it was difficult to steal the books of the Taishan heaven. It turned out that he didn't spend any effort at all. While the two girls were copying the book, Han Fei had already come to the center of the 1,000-meter-high tower. At this point, there were no more bookshelves, and above his head was a starry sky. Han Fei had seen this scene before. Back in the Fiery Mountain in the Level 2 fishery, he had seen this kind of starry sky after climbing up the pillar. The sky above this kind of tower was actually connected to a void, and each bit of starlight actually represented an opportunity, a treasure. Of course, in the Sutra Tower, each bit of starlight should represent a book. Han Fei didn't feel good at all. This kind of treasure hiding method, he had to make more moves in order to gain something. But once he made a move, wouldn't he be discovered by others? Han Fei forced himself to calm down. He still had a way to let Old Yuan use the turtle shell sky ceiling technique to temporarily cover this space. Of course, if he did this, it was also very likely that he would be discovered. Han Fei didn't want to run out so quickly. After all, it wasn't easy to get in. If he left without any gains, wouldn't it be a big loss? The purpose of Han Fei's visit was to find a body-refining technique that was suitable for him. There were many books in the Taishan heaven. If he chose a few dozen, he could push the demon purification pot and fuse it with the pure mysterious body. Maybe he could get a more powerful technique. The pure mysterious body was ranked 998th in the Pioneer Sea realm. Among the thousands of races in the sea, it seemed extremely strong, but Han Fei knew that as long as there were enough body-refining techniques, he could come up with more powerful techniques. Didn't it smell good? However, when Han Fei tried to fly into this starry sky, he was speechless to find that the stars were retreating. F***CK. Han Fei immediately retreated. Fortunately, he just tried to get a little closer. If the commotion was too big, wouldn't they be exposed on the spot? However, just as the stars retreated, Mu Shui Cici could not help but look up at the top of the pagoda. Why did the sea of books move? Mu Shi said, "Isn't it always moving?" Mu Shui Cici shook her head. "No, that was wandering. But this time, it was a hit and run." Just as Mu Shui Cici recovered from her shock, she saw that the white-clothed martial uncle had appeared in the pagoda with a whoosh. Mu Shui Cici was shocked and hurriedly transmitted her voice. "Martial uncle, I'm not slacking off." However, the white-robed martial uncle said indifferently, "Kai Yuan, come in." Following that, Song Kai Yuan, Lu Ran, Li Kaitian, and Jian Hui entered the scripture pagoda. Mu Shui Cici asked in surprise, "Why are you punished too?" Song Kai Yuan shook his head helplessly. This silly junior sister, why is she always so stupid at critical moments? The man in white said, "All right, this show has been going on for you for so long. It's time for you to show yourself. Should I call you Shuizhan?" or Han Fei? Or should I call you Yin Palace Master? Everyone, except for Song Kaiyuan, everyone was dumbfounded. What did he mean? Lu Ran and Mu Shi were also dumbfounded. Snow battle? Why does it have to be snow battle? Li Kaitian couldn't help but say, Han Fei? Isn't that the captain of the Avengers? And Han Fei himself was also dumbfounded. What's going on? I've been discovered? My perfect concealment technique has been seen through. Outside the Book Mountain, in a restaurant, Han Fei, Xia Xiaochan, Yin and Yin were having dinner. Suddenly, Han Fei's pupils constricted, and he couldn't help looking in the direction of the Book Mountain. Excellent. Is this Book Mountain prophetic? How did it know I was coming? Xia Xiaochan asked, what's wrong? Han Fei said carelessly, I've been discovered. In the scripture pagoda, Mui Shui Sisi and the others looked around in a daze. There were only a few of them in this pagoda. Who was senior uncle talking to? The man in white said casually, since it's confirmed that you are here, you must be here. You just been to the glass sky, and the Taishian heaven is so close to the glass sky. You have no reason not to come. Mui Shui Sisi asked, Senior uncle, what are you talking about? Is there anyone here? Don't scare me. Mushilai looked at Mui Shui Sisi. Don't talk. After a few seconds, a voice said leisurely, I'm very curious. When did the people of the academy start a scheme against me? How did you know my identity? How did you know that I would definitely come back? Hiss, ghost, Mui Shui Sisi and Mu Shi's eyes widened. They were both taken aback. So, they had been with a mysterious person just now? Mu Shi's eyes glittered. Snow battle? Is it the snow battle of the Snow God's Temple that Senior Uncle Thief King mentioned? At this moment, Song Kaiyuan stood up. Fellow Cultivator Snow Battle, I've already guessed that you and Snow Battle are the same person in the land of Kinggrave. Excluding the possibility of an incarnation, and with the treasures of the Heavenless Heaven, my guess is almost certain. After leaving the land of Kinggrave, I quickly went to the Martial Emperor's city to find out some information about you. But I found that you had direct contact with Han Fei, the commander of the Avenger. Plus some things in the Thunderfire Heaven. It's not difficult to confirm that you and Han Fei are the same person. Song Kaiyuan said again, I wasn't very sure that you would come. First of all, the glass sky and the Taishian heaven are very close. To be exact, the 4 divine palaces are all very close. The Taishian heaven is known as the world of books, so I guess that you might come back. Secondly, we guessed that you would come to search for historical records and investigate the secrets of the chaotic Azure Sea. It was just a guess, but it happened to be correct. However, I didn't expect that you would come into contact with the Sea of Books. Just as Song Kaiyuan finished speaking, he saw another person appear with a swoosh. Lu Ran couldn't help but be surprised. Master? Li Kaitian exclaimed, Ah, Master Dragon? Jian Hui said, Greetings, Master Sword God. Lu Ran's master was naturally Lu Li, the master of the glass sky. The master dragon that Li Kaitian mentioned was originally Shang Long, the master of the boundless heavenly palace. Jian Hui's master, the sword god, was Lu Qing, the master of the sword god palace. The last one was Lu Yu, the master of the Taishian heaven. The snow girl had mentioned these people on the snow god. At this moment, Han Fei took a look. Damn, they knew I was coming, so they were all waiting for me here. Han Fei said, It seems that I have a lot of face. I can't believe the 4 immortal masters all showed up. Lu Li looked like a young girl, with a relaxed face and a white veil over her face. Her eyes were watery, and she was naturally a peerless beauty. Lu Li said, You went to the glazed sky and sparred with Feng Xinlan, and you want to return the favor just like that? It seems that your plan is quite good. Anyway, Lu Ran and the others were dumbfounded. With so many big shots here, it was impossible for them to be talking to the air. There must be someone here. The next moment, they heard Mu Shui Sisi say to Mu Shi, It's the Gemini divine technique, the Yin-Yang Heaven Gemini divine technique that has disappeared for 80,000 years. Oh my God, he's here. The senior uncle in white looked at Mu Shui Sisi and shook his head helplessly. Stupid. Han Fei finally understood. Mu Shui Sisi might be a bait, deliberately put here. When Mu Shi and the others arrived, The senior uncle in white knew that with this girl's character, she wouldn't be able to bear it. He also knew that Mushi would definitely take the initiative to go in and be punished together. In fact, it was just the two girls playing games together. In this way, he would have a chance to enter the Sutra Tower. After entering the Sutra Tower, once he was tempted by the treasures that were as dense as stars, he would give himself away. And all this was within these people's calculations. Perhaps there was more than one coincidence in their calculations. For example, they might have suspected that he was here, so they let Mu Shui Cece enter the tower, or they might have tricked him. No wonder. I was wondering why it was so easy on the way here. It was too easy to enter this book mountain. I didn't expect that everything I saw was bait. Han Fei didn't hide it anymore. At this moment, sitting on a bookshelf, he said lightly, "However, since you know it's the Gemini divine technique, you should know that this Sutra Tower can't trap me." Lu Yu said, "We don't have any malicious intentions. You don't have to run away. Don't you want to steal books from my Sutra Tower? As the master of the Taishian heaven, I can let you steal a few times. So what?" Han Fei didn't know what to say. As the saying went, free was the most expensive. It was absolutely impossible for these people not to have any ulterior motives. What Han Fei didn't understand was, since these masters of the immortal palace knew that he was coming, why did they let their heavenly talents witness this scene? Was it fun to unveil his mysterious veil? Han Fei said, "Don't be so harsh. What do you mean by stealing? I'm borrowing." Li Yu smiled lightly. Whether it's stealing or borrowing, since the yin-yang heaven has appeared, it means that it's not far from returning. In today's chaotic world, is there any place for the yin-yang heaven? It was impossible for the snow god palace to protect the yin-yang heaven. Even with the addition of the four of us, yin-yang heaven would still find it difficult to establish themselves in the chaotic Azure Sea. But are you going to abandon us for allies? Han Fei smiled. Allies? I wonder what other conditions are needed to become an ally. Sword god Lu Qing said, "Leave chaotic Azure Sea." Han Fei frowned. In the next moment, Lu Yu added, "If I'm not mistaken, you should have a powerful compass." Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. How did these people know about the multitude navigator? Lioli said, "Don't be surprised. That item was originally forged by the joint efforts of our clans. However, 80,000 years ago, something unexpected happened, which led to the Yin-Yang, Shui Mu, Jin Wu, and Jiugong clans being suppressed. In the end, the Golden Crow fell, the 9 palaces were sealed, and the Yin and Yang, as well as the Water and Wood, escaped. The 4 of us formed an alliance and retreated to a corner, which has lasted until now. Therefore, from the very beginning, we have been allies." First update. Asking for votes into Chapter 1816. Han Fei didn't trust this so-called ally very much. He could guess that the Yin-Yang heaven used to have a good relationship with these families. But before he came to the Taishian heaven, Xian Feng didn't say anything to him. After all, tens of thousands of years had passed. No matter how good their relationship was before, could it still be as good now? Han Fei didn't want to gamble. Han Fei said, "Are you going to talk about this in front of so many people?" Lu Yu said, "Why don't you show up and have a chat?" Han Fei said, "I'm in the state of showing up now." Everyone, this was especially true for Mu Shui Cece and the others. They had all learned about the Gemini divine arts from history. No one had really seen it. Now, Han Fei's words made them speechless. They were half-kings, but they couldn't even find the other party's shadow. They had scanned many times with their perception, but there was clearly nothing here. Liu didn't ask anymore. They could feel where Han Fei was. However, he could only sense nothingness. There was a faint chaotic energy surging there. If they really took action, the chaotic energy should have been self-detonated. Lu Yu couldn't help but say, "Anyway, since you are here, I don't mind you choosing a few great techniques. Let's talk about it after you explore the sea of books." Huh? Han Fei was taken aback. "Are you kidding me? I'm here to steal books. But you guys blocked me here. Not only did you not drive me away, but you also want me to explore the sea of books? What the hell?" There was no need to guess. This was obviously a trap. Han Fei said, Guys, you're not waiting for me to explore the sea of books, are you? You better tell me in advance. Otherwise, the sea of books, I really can't explore it. Lu Yu said, after exploring the sea of books, I will tell you. Han Fei outside. Han Fei's white mist body was testing his luck with a 9-palace destiny ruler. Han Fei was really confused by the behavior of Lu Yu and the others. After all, he came here to steal something, only to find that the owner was waiting for him to steal it. Also, he stole it for himself. If there was nothing fishy about it, he might as well pull his head off and kick it like a ball. However, when Han Fei tested his luck, he found that today's luck was on the auspicious side. Although it wasn't a very auspicious hexagram, it still meant that something good was about to happen. Can it really be explored? Are the masters of these immortal palaces really that friendly? However, the 9 palaces ruler of fortune wouldn't lie. Even an auspicious divination had appeared, so why didn't he try it himself? In the Sutra Tower, Han Fei smiled and said, since you don't mind, I'll try. Lu Yu smiled and said, you can probe it 9 times. Song Kaiyuan and Mushui Cece looked at Lu Yu at the same time and thought, isn't this unfair? Our family is only allowed to explore the sea of books 3 times at a time. Why did this guy get 9 chances? Before Song Kaiyuan and company could react in shock, they heard Lu Yu say, however, you have to take note that anyone who searches for books in the Scripture Pagoda only has 9 chances in their lifetime. Once it's used up, we won't be able to find any more books from here. Song Kaiyuan pondered. After all, this person is the current immortal master of the yin-yang heaven. Maybe his status is higher than theirs. So, he could understand. After a slight surprise, Song Kaiyuan and the others all raised their heads. Very few people were qualified to explore the sea of books in the Sutra Tower. Han Fei could be said to be the strongest and the highest status among all the people who explored the sea of books. What kind of books would he find? Lu Yu said, you need to release your soul and blood to illuminate the sea of books, and then probe the books with your fish hook. You'll know once you try it. The Gemini divine technique was telepathic. Although Han Fei didn't know what Lu Yu and the others were up to, he wasn't worried. They had clearly asked him to explore the sea of books. If he didn't even dare to do this, wouldn't he seem too stingy? Han Fei didn't hide his movements, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared at the highest point of the Sutra Tower at the bottom of the sea of books. At the bottom of the sea of books, there was a round wooden platform, which was for people to stand on. Han Fei was now standing on it, holding a fishing rod. In the sea of books, divine power shone, and in an instant, it soared into the galaxy. Han Fei switched his great path to his own great path, the Chanchi Great Path, and the road of invincibility. Swish, swish, swish. Although Mushui Cece and the others couldn't see Han Fei, they could see the fishing rod hanging in the air and the soaring blood, so they knew that someone was here. Suddenly, they heard Mushui Cece's voice transmission. Look, there are more stars in the sea of books. Without Mushui Cece's words, everyone saw that in the sea of books, there were more and more shining stars, so many that they were densely packed. However, the stars had different distances and brightness, as if they were competing with each other. However, the white-robed Uncle Master of the Academy said, it's not necessarily a good thing that there are more stars in the sea of books. If you have too many choices, you won't know how to choose. At this moment, countless calls suddenly appeared in Han Fei's heart. At a glance, Han Fei could see at least hundreds of shining stars, trying to establish a connection with him. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Damn, how should I choose? I feel that they're all good stuff. Originally, Han Fei was going to look for the body tempering art. However, when he was in the Snow God's temple, he had already deduced the body tempering art. Although he might not be the strongest, in this chaotic azure sea, it was very likely that he was the strongest. After all, the pure mysterious body was one of the top body tempering arts in the entire Pioneer Sea realm. Of course, he had to look for it, but the number of times was limited, so he couldn't look for this first. Han Fei looked at the sky full of stars and thought, I have to use the nautical panorama to guide me. Immediately afterward, in Han Fei's body, In the place covered by the black mist, the nautical panorama began to spin. Han Fei's first choice was naturally the 8th level of the void fishing art. Whether its name was void fishing art or true spirit fishing art, the nautical panorama knew what he was going to choose. And the nautical panorama began to spin, which meant that there was something he needed here. Under the gazes of Song, Kaiyuan, and the others, after waiting for a while, Han Fei suddenly cast the hook and hooked a shining star near the center of the tower. In the next moment, Han Fei saw an ancient fish-skin book emerge from the void. On this fish-skin book was written Void Fishing Art, Level 8. Han Fei was stunned. He didn't expect that what he fished up was the void fishing art instead of the true spirit fishing art, which saved him the deduction step. Shang Long wondered, why haven't I heard of this great technique? Sword God Lu Qing asked, the Taoist aura on this book seems to be dug out from the palace, right? Lu Li nodded. I've never heard of it. LVU, this is your family's book. You should know, right? LVU shrugged and sneered. The tower is not my family's tower. I've never heard of this great technique either. However, I do remember one thing. Everyone looked at him, and LVU said, among the human cultivation techniques in the entire chaotic ocean, there is a fishing technique that only has the 7th level. Don't you know it? Lu Li asked. You mean the true spirit fishing art? That technique should be of mediocre quality, right? LVU shook his head. Although it's of mediocre quality, it is one of the few great techniques that can cover everyone from the lowest level to the Pioneer Sea realm. Besides, I've never heard of an 8th level. Everyone fell silent. LVU knew much more about the techniques and combat skills in the world than they did. If LVU's first thought was the true spirit fishing art, maybe there was something between the two. But Han Fei was shocked. Even if this was the only harvest today, it would be worth it. At least, this showed that there was still a way forward for the void fishing art. In fact, the 7th level of void fishing, void arrival, was already extremely terrifying. It was also different from the projection identity of ordinary kings. It was said that the void descent could cross thousands of kilometers. However, in Han Fei's opinion, this ability was not as good as the void lines and the sky stealing technique. The combination of the two was simply perfect. The void descent didn't have any other effect except that it could give him some clones to fight multiple people. Now that he had obtained the 8th level of the void fishing art, Han Fei immediately stuffed it into Forge the Universe. Even in the state of black fog, Han Fei's use of Forge the Universe wouldn't be hindered. Han Fei secretly smiled as he got this great technique. Anyway, these people couldn't see his expression. They only knew that he was the master of the yin-yang heaven. But how could they know that he had a treasure like the demon purification pot? However, as soon as he activated the void fishing art, the stars in the sea of books became denser. The number of stars had even reached the point where there was no distance between each other. While LVU and the others were shocked, Han Fei's nautical panorama began to spin again. This time, Han Fei wanted to find the strongest body refining technique in this world. From the very beginning, Han Fei's goal was to find a body refining technique. Although he had deduced the pure mystic body, he had come to the Sutra Tower. If he didn't find it, it would be a waste of his trip. Swish, when a mysterious book shining with brilliant golden light appeared, Han Fei saw that it was a body refining technique named Chaotic Devil Body. Below, the immeasurable heavenly palace master was shocked. Isn't this the chaotic demon body of the Chaos Palace? Grand Elder, does your academy even have such a great body refining technique? LVU shrugged. How do I know? The books in the Sutra Tower are all hooked. Since he can get the chaotic demon body, it shows that his body refining talent is at least comparable to that of the Grand Elder. Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1817. After Han Fei received the chaotic demon body, he didn't check it on the spot, but threw it into Forge the Universe. After getting the chaotic ocean body refining art, Han Fei's third major technique was the one that was most suitable for himself. There were thousands of great techniques, but the most important thing was to be suitable. Because the number of times was limited, Han Fei would not use all the times to explore the body refining art. waiting to fuse and deduce. Therefore, when a nautical panorama spun for the third time, it naturally pointed to the spell technique that was most suitable for him. Han Fei didn't specify a category. When a needle was fixed, the hook was swung out. He pulled it out from the sea of books and saw that the title of the book was Yin Yang Transmigration Saber. As soon as this great art appeared, the sea of books was filled with multicolored light. Stars twinkled, and all sorts of great stars flickered. LVU, Lu Li, and the others exchanged glances and nodded slightly. In their hearts, they seemed to have made some judgments about certain things. At this point, Han Fei had used up the multidimensional telescope. He looked at the sky, full of great techniques that almost blinded him, and didn't know how to cast a hook. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Without the nautical panorama, he didn't even know how to attack. Although LVU gave him 9 chances to choose, how could he fish blindly? This trip to the scripture tower was very different from what he had expected. Han Fei didn't find a tremendous body tempering technique, but he did get the 8th level of the void fishing art. Just this one book was better than thousands of books. This book had determined his future path, and he could continue down it. After the 3 major techniques, Han Fei put away the fishing rod and dispersed the blood chi. The starlight in the sea of books slowly weakened the moment Han Fei's aura faded. Finally, it returned to the appearance of the stars in the night sky. Han Fei said, 9 times is too many. I think I may have to cross paths with the Taishian heaven in the future. Now, can a few of you explain why you want me to explore the sea of books first? Immeasurable Heavens Shang Long sneered. Brat, I'll tell you straight. The fact that you're here means that you've inherited the fortune of yin and yang, water and wood, and the 9 palaces. Your luck has attracted the sea of books, proving that you are a person with great luck. The 36 profound heavens have been trapped in the chaotic vast sea for far too long. If yin-yang heaven were to reappear, how could we not have allies to help us? Sword God Lu Qing said indifferently, I didn't come looking for you with ill intentions, but your appearance represents a change in this era. Our 4 palaces are different from the Grand Pure One and the Limitless One. We are waiting for a change. Han Fei was lost for words. How did you know it was me? Lu Yu said with a smile, luck. From the moment you obtained that compass that took you out of the chaotic azure sea, your fate was destined to be different. This time, even Song Kaiyuan was confused. Did they set up this ambush just for this? As smart as Song Kaiyuan was, he naturally knew about the existence of the Arch Palace. In a way, it also restricted human exploration of the outside world. However, the depths of the Imperial Palace were too dangerous. When a king fell, he would still fall. But now with Han Fei, there was hope to leave the chaotic Azure Sea. In any case, this was great news for the 4 palaces. However, Han Fei was silent for a moment and said, Seniors, you want to leave the chaotic Azure Sea? Even if I have a way to leave the chaotic Azure Sea, how do you know I'm willing to leave? Lu Li said, You are only a half-king now, but you can fight Feng Xinlan to a draw. This means that it shouldn't be so difficult for you to become a king. Do you also want to sink around the Arch Palace? Han Fei said with a smile, You great Zuantians have explored the Arch Palace for 80,000 years. My water and wood Yin-Yang Palace can't just leave the Arch Palace without looking. I will definitely go to the Arch Palace. If you expect me to take you away, how can a few books be enough? Lu Yu said with a smile, It's too early to say whether to go or not. But this doesn't prevent us from establishing a certain alliance first. At least, you owe Glass Heaven a favor, and now you have obtained 3 great techniques from my scripture tower. Since you are ready to take revenge on the Grand Pure One and the limitless immortal palaces, you can't become enemies with the Grand Pure One and the colored glaze immortal palaces. So, why don't we form an alliance now? Han Fei thought for a moment and said with a smile, I have no objection. However, I'm curious, why are they all here? Logically speaking, these things should be discussed with the masters of the immortal palaces. Why are Song Kaiyuan and the others here? And they have been here since the beginning. At this moment, Lu Li interrupted, It's not so easy to return the favor of Glass Heaven. The Feng family has a problem with Yin Er's matter. But you have killed the people of the Feng family and fought Feng Xinlan. You have paid off part of the favor. There are also 2 people from Glass Heaven. You should take them with you. Liu Yu said, after all, you obtained 3 great techniques from the Scripture Tower. I heard that your Avenger pirates are short of people. My disciples Song Kaiyuan and Mui Shui Sisi are very knowledgeable. There is almost nothing they don't know in the chaotic Azure Sea. If you take them with you, it may be of great benefit to you. Sword God Lu Qing said, the 4 palaces of the Sword God are 4 in 1. If you form an alliance, it will be 5 in 1. My disciples' swordsmanship is unparalleled. Immeasurable Sky Shanglong said, I have the same idea as Lu Qing. 5 in 1, they can take their disciple, but not mine. With that said, Shanglong patted Li Kaitian and made him stagger. In the future, you can go to the Avenger and be a pirate. Li Kaitian was dumbfounded. Are you trying to drive us to be pirates? Not only Li Kaitian, but Han Fei was also dumbfounded. What's going on? Has the trust between us been so high that I can help you take care of your disciples? Han Fei thought to himself, damn, do I look so free? I have a lot of things to do. I'm not a nanny. Do I deserve to be your disciple? Han Fei immediately refused. I'm not afraid of taking them in, but do they dare to follow me back to the Yin-Yang heaven? I just want to say that their chances of survival are very low if they go to the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei was not joking. When he left the Yin-Yang heaven, the massive energy was now suppressed by the old turtle. It was not easy to leave the Yin-Yang heaven, but was it easy to enter the Yin-Yang heaven? If it was easy, the savage abyss would have been trampled over by people over the years. Liu Yu smiled. Don't worry, I won't go to the Yin-Yang heaven with you. Anyway, there are only a few people on the Avenger. It's fine if you show your face a few times. This time, I asked you to take them to the Martial Emperor's city. Han Fei asked, why do I have to go to the Martial Emperor's city? Liu Yu said, I can give you a reason why you have to go. The Martial Emperor's city is not only the most well-informed and resourceful place in the entire chaotic ocean. In the Martial Emperor's city, there's also a sacred place called the Martial Emperor's inheritance. Legend has it that it's the Emperor trial. Although the trial is full of dangers, it's very rewarding. You haven't established your sea yet. Don't you want to go and have a look? Song Kaiyuan and the others were surprised. The Martial Emperor's inheritance is about to open? Shang Long said leisurely. After the trial in the land of King Grave, the Martial Emperor's inheritance suddenly announced its opening. All the heavenly talents are going there. Han Fei frowned. That a good story? I wonder what the real situation is. However, Liu Yu continued, it may not matter whether others go or not. However, this opportunity should be irresistible to you, because there's also a bronze gate there. Han Fei was shocked. Bronze gate? Yes. Han Fei seemed to understand something. The Martial Emperor's inheritance opened behind the land of King Grave, and there was a bronze gate there? Wasn't this guiding him to complete the trial of the Void Temple? Not to mention anything else, just to get a wine gourd. Han Fei had to participate in the Martial Emperor's inheritance. Han Fei deliberately kept silent for a moment, and then said, okay, I agree. Sword God Lu Qing said, the situation outside the Martial Emperor's city is treacherous. It's the most chaotic place in the chaotic ocean. Be careful not to be hunted. Han Fei grinned. I'm looking forward to being hunted. When will the invincible inheritance open? Liu Yu said, 3 months later. It will last for a month. The opening time of the Martial Emperor's inheritance has never been precise. It all depends on the Martial Emperor's city, so it's best to know the time. Han Fei said, how long will it take to get to the Martial Emperor's city? Liu Yu said, each palace has its own route. You can get there in about 20 days. Han Fei thought for a moment. 2 months later, the Avenger will appear in the Taishin heaven. They can come here when they hear the news. Liu Yu said, okay. By the way, do you still want to explore the Sea of Books? Han Fei said, no. I'll explore another day if I have the chance. Han Fei thought to himself, for now, I've already got the 3 books I need. That's enough. I don't know what books to look for if I have more. Instead of looking for body tempering techniques here, I might as well go to the Martial Emperor's city to put up a task. asking someone to collect body tempering cultivation techniques. As long as they had enough money, what great technique could they not collect? I have more than 9,000 ultra-quality divine weapons. Are you kidding me? Han Fei had nothing to talk about. He disappeared quietly with the twin fusion. After Han Fei left, Shanglong said, "Old Lu, could this kid do it or not? He's only touched the luck of a few palaces. Do we really have to rely on him for the fate of the 36 profound heavens?" Lu Yu said leisurely, "Otherwise, do you have a way to leave the chaotic ocean? In that case, I'll bet on you too." The third is asking for votes into this chapter. Chapter 1818. Half a day later, below the Taishan heaven, in a place called Tomorrow Town, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were strolling in the market with Iner and Yin. At this moment, the strongest of the four was Han Fei, who had just entered the law enforcer realm. The other three were invisible. Han Fei held a few fish balls in his hand and handed each to the maid. No matter where it is, the taste of these fish balls is almost the same. I wonder if this is an heirloom fish ball. Xia Xiaochan was speechless. Come on, are we really going to Martial Emperor City with those people from Taishan Heaven in 2 months? Han Fei nodded. It's okay. There shouldn't be any problems with these families. If there's a problem, I'll test my luck. Xia Xiaochan said, I know about the Martial Emperor's inheritance in the Martial Emperor City. It was said to be extremely difficult. However, regarding the Bronze Gate, I have never seen it in the historical records. It was just that the Martial Emperor's inheritance was divided into different grades, and there was a chance of one dying. The higher the difficulty of the choice, the higher the probability of death. As for what it looks like, I've never seen it before. Han Fei smiled and said, Then let's go and have a look. Wasn't it said that Martial Emperor City was absolutely safe? Even if Chun Huangdian knows that you're here, can he go to Martial Emperor City and capture you? Xia Xiaochan smiled. That won't happen. The Martial Emperor City won't make an exception. Once a precedent was set, the Martial Emperor City's reputation would collapse. However, if Chun Huangdian blocks our way, it will be difficult for us to leave. Han Fei said with a smile. Chun Huangdian is just a king after all. So what if he has attained the Emperor realm? Martial Emperor City is so big. When the time comes, I just need to sneak out from wherever I go. I don't believe that he will still be able to find me. What if he's waiting for us in the savage abyss? Not if. He can only wait for us in the abyss. This is also the reason I want to go to Martial Emperor City. Maybe now I can't beat him in a fight. However, when it comes to causing trouble, I've never been afraid of anyone. Xia Xiaochan tilted her head and looked at Han Fei, thinking to herself, just don't cause any trouble in Martial Emperor City. Otherwise, they might kick us out. That wouldn't be fun. Behind Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, Iner and Nian walked and ate together without any awkwardness. Perhaps she had been conquered by Nian Er's gluttonous behavior, but now when Iner walked, she would also hold a bag of potato chips in her hand and crunch them. After shopping, Han Fei didn't send Iner and Nian Er back to the sea-quelling painting. Instead, he sealed Yin Er's heavenly heritage power and asked the old turtle's soul and Xiao Se to stay with them in Tomorrow Town. Xia Xiaochan and the hexagon starfish fell into a state of cultivation after listening to Han Fei's lesson on disassembling spiritual energy. It was a pity that he couldn't take Xia Xiaochan and the big starfish into Forge the Universe. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been allowed to cultivate in the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei, on the other hand, came to Forge the Universe alone and looked at the techniques he had just acquired, because void fishing was no longer a true spirit fishing technique. Therefore, Han Fei couldn't use the true spirit fishing art to temper his body by triggering lightning strikes. The 8th level of the void fishing art was called time fishing. However, when Han Fei opened the book, he found that there was not a single word in the book. If his eyes fell on the book, he would slowly see a piece of blue. This book turned out to have the power of time. Han Fei tried to extract the power of time in this book several times, but he failed every time as if it were a heavenly book. Han Fei was not a hesitant person. Originally, the void descent technique that he was cultivating now was a technique of the Pioneer Sea state. Although he hadn't reached the Pioneer Sea state yet, he was already learning it. Time fishing should be a technique that could only be learned by the Pioneer Sea state. Even if he wanted to learn it early, it would be possible only after he reached the Pioneer Sea state. Han Fei didn't panic. Anyway, it was better to be prepared. Looking at another book, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Chaotic Demon Body, Ultra Quality of the Pioneer Sea State. Introduction. Chaotic Demon Body is a great technique that separates and gathers the body with chaotic energy. This technique requires the vibration of the void to reorganize the body repeatedly. To cultivate this technique, one must have an indomitable will and a tenacious mind. Once cultivated, the body can withstand the void storm. Even if the body collapses, it can fight separately or reorganize itself, and its strength will not be weakened at all. This technique is ranked 11668 among the Pioneer Sea State body refining techniques. Deduced art. Chaotic body deduction cost. 1,000 strands of chaotic energy effect. If there is no interference, the body can be reorganized infinitely. Disadvantage. The power of the soul is weak. When Han Fei saw the Pioneer Sea State body refining technique ranked 11668, he lost interest. This is the strongest body refining technique in the chaotic sea state. Don't you feel embarrassed to be ranked more than 10,000? I just deduced something casually, and it's ranked 998. Can't I give it to you from the beginning to the end? Damn, I've lost a lot this time. If I had known that the strongest body refining technique here was only ranked more than 10,000, why didn't I synthesize it myself? Besides, this chaotic demon body couldn't be cultivated at any level. It was not as good as his pure mystic body. It could be cultivated at any level. Compared with this, Han Fei felt that the pure mystic body was extremely useful. More importantly, it was not tiring or painful. Its only shortcoming was that the resource utilization rate was too low. Only 100 million of the 10 billion points of spiritual energy could reach the level required for the pure mystic body. Han Fei threw the Chaos Fiend body aside and picked up another book. After a while, information appeared in his eyes. Yin Yang Reincarnation Knife, unrated, introduction. To practice this technique, one must master the great Tao of Yin and Yang. The Yin Yang Reincarnation Knife contains the pure Yang knife and the grand Yin Soul knife. When one knife is annihilated, the other knife reappears. The two knives are repeated 9 times before they are truly annihilated. Once this knife is formed, it is impossible to guard against it. Deduction cannot be deduced and can only be comprehended by oneself. Effect. The deeper one's understanding of the great Tao of Yin and Yang, the more knife momentum reincarnations there will be. Disadvantage. If you are used to using this knife, you will inevitably have doubts about reincarnation. Remark. This technique requires 2 treasured knives. After reading the Yin Yang Reincarnation Knife, Han Fei's eyes widened. This is simply an ultra-quality combat skill made for me. Not only could it attack the physical body, but it could also attack the soul. The saber slashes were endless. If I understand correctly, it means that I only need to make 1 knife, but in fact, I can make 18 knife attacks? Gulp! Han Fei couldn't help but grin. Compared with the chaotic demon body just now, this Yin Yang Reincarnation Knife could almost be called a divine technique. After thinking about it, Han Fei felt that this Yin Yang Reincarnation Knife was no worse than the Heaven Opening Sword Manual he got from the Grand Purity Palace. Of course, if the Heaven Opening Sword Manual could become the Heaven Opening Knife, he wouldn't mind. Han Fei's first thought was to use the Blade of Hope as one of the 2 treasure knives. But after thinking about it, it was better not to expose the Blade of Hope. He could use the Blade of Hope when needed, so that he could keep some trump cards. There were still 2 months before he went to the Martial Emperor City. This period of time was not long, but it was not short either. In Forge the Universe, it was more than 5 years. Han Fei certainly wouldn't waste such a long time. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the magical wine gourd that had been put aside flew into his hand. Han Fei grinned. I'd like to see what's so special about the wine brewed in this magical gourd. With the experience from the last time, Han Fei directly activated the Tao this time. His strength soared more than 3 times, and then he opened the cork. Pop! Han Fei almost lost his balance and dropped the gourd. When he pulled it out, Han Fei's face turned green. This thing actually required him to use 50% of his strength to pull it out. This meant that those who pulled out the cork of the gourd were at least in the sea-opening realm. Han Fei was speechless. Even pulling out the cork was so difficult. If he wanted to completely refine this gourd divine weapon, it would take him a long time. However, the moment the cork was pulled out, Han Fei immediately smelled a strong aroma of wine. There was a pale red mist coming out of the gourd. Han Fei couldn't help but think that the mist in front of the bronze gate at that time should be the smell of wine. Han Fei hurriedly sat on his ice lotus, raised the gourd, and thought to himself, I'll drink less. For the first time, I'll just take a small sip. However, perhaps because it was the first time Han Fei had used a divine weapon, his mouth bulged. A mouthful of hard liquor directly burned his tongue. Han Fei subconsciously opened his mouth. This time, he had to drink half a caddy. F***, I'm screwed. Han Fei hurriedly plugged the cork. In less than 3 seconds, in his body, strange energy surged left and right. In his brain, there seemed to be a waterfall washing over him, and he felt dizzy. Han Fei thought, this is impossible. I can't sleep. Immediately, the power of hope in his body surged out. With the help of the power of hope, Han Fei managed to stabilize himself with a flushed face. The old turtle suggested, why don't you give me a sip too? However, Han Fei was probably too drunk to hear anything at this moment. There was a thunderous sound in his brain. Han Fei felt that he was spinning. A massive amount of energy rushed into his body. In fact, the old turtle was dumbfounded. Han Fei's body was spewing out a large amount of red liquor power. It was not energy, but seemed to be a kind of epiphany that could make the mind clear. However, Han Fei might have drunk too much and his mind was not clear at all. Han Fei only felt that his body was flowing backward, but he felt that it was not enough and his body could bear more. As a result, in Forge the Universe, a large number of ultra-quality spiritual stones collapsed. At this moment, a small half of the energy released by the old turtle was absorbed at once. Just like this, it was not until more than 10 days later that the liquor in Han Fei's body finally disappeared. At this time, Han Fei finally sobered up. It was not until the 18th day that Han Fei finally returned to normal. However, when Han Fei looked at the information, he was surprised to find that in only 18 days, his soul power had increased by more than 1,200 points, and his strength had increased by 302 waves. A sip of wine? Han Fei couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Damn, what kind of cultivation speed is this? Although I have the power of hope, this cultivation speed is a bit too fast, isn't it? If this goes on, how strong will I be in 5 years? Chapter 1819. As for the wine in the gourd, he didn't know whether it was 100-year-old wine or 1,000-year-old wine. However, it shouldn't be 10 or 10,000 years old. 10,000 years was too long. With his friendship with that senior brother, there was no need for him to give him a 10,000-year-old wine as soon as they met, right? Between the 100-year Tao-seeking wine and the 1,000-year heavenly Tao wine, Han Fei felt that the 100-year wine should be the 100-year wine. Unfortunately, he couldn't make the gourd recognize him as its master, and he couldn't feel how much wine there was in the gourd. I wonder when I'll be able to make this gourd recognize me as its master and forge the universe. Half a year later, Han Fei's power of faith was exhausted. During this period of time, Han Fei quickly increased his strength to 34,652 waves. In the absence of the power of faith, Han Fei needed to focus on the cultivation of the Nirmala mysterious body. He also had to teach the old turtle and Xia Xiaochan. Occasionally, he would go out and stroll around Tomorrow Town with Yin and the others. These days were quite comfortable. In Forge the Universe, 3 years later, Han Fei found that there was a bottleneck in his cultivation. Or rather, it shouldn't be called a bottleneck. Rather, it should be called a greater resistance to cultivation. When Han Fei took a closer look, information popped up in his eyes. Owner Han Fei level 89 Half-step king. Family tree in the vast seas. 2720986 chaotic energy. 2276 strands mind power. 323401 perception. 220,000 kilometers power. 38,763 waves. First spiritual pulse. Unknown. Second spiritual vein. Unknown. First spiritual beast. Twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. Level 79. Second spiritual beast. King Sparrow. Level 78. Main art. Void arrival. Level 7 of void fishing. King level. Divine quality. At this point, the moment the resistance appeared, Han Fei realized that it was extremely difficult for him to surpass 40,000 waves of power in the half-king realm with his current life level and bloodline level. Even though he had already forged the indestructible golden body, without going through the king tribulation, the strength of the indestructible golden body seemed to be close to the limit. Want to make another breakthrough? Transcending the tribulation might be the only way. Phew, Han Fei smiled faintly. I've gained a lot on this trip to the chaotic ocean. If he could return to the yin-yang heaven, he would be able to successfully transcend the tribulation. As Lu Yu and the others said, it was possible for yin-yang heaven to return to the chaotic azure sea. After all, now that he'd attained the king realm, he wasn't afraid of anyone in the chaotic azure sea. At this moment, not only had Han Fei's strength increased, but the Emperor Sparrow had also leveled up. Han Fei was used with growth speed. After all, it was the Emperor Sparrow, and it could not be judged by common sense. Han Fei, on the other hand, was a bit hesitant. The information about his spiritual heritage had always been unknown. Now, he was already a half-king, so why was he still an unknown? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder if there were other vines in the chaotic ocean after he passed the king's tribulation. The sooner he collected all the vines in the demon purification pot, the stronger the demon purification pot would be. There was no doubt about this. 2 months later, Xia Xiaochan, Yin Nian and Xiao Se were all on the Avenger. The old tortoise habitually slept and cultivated. Ever since it had its own body, its desire to come out was not as high. Therefore, he was still cultivating and forged the universe. And Han Fei sighed slightly. The consumption of resources was too fast. Originally, he had nearly 7 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. However, it seemed that because he was cultivating this pure, mysterious body, the ultra-quality spiritual stones were consumed extremely fast. At this time, there were only 2 million left. This was the drawback of the pure, mysterious body. The efficiency of an ultra-quality spiritual stone was only 1%. This led to the spiritual energy in Forge the Universe to the extent of exploding. Fortunately, the old tortoise had been cultivating and Forge the Universe was constantly expanding. Otherwise, Han Fei didn't know how to use the spiritual energy. Now, Forge the Universe had expanded to 5,000 kilometers. Although the consumption of expansion had been increasing, the spiritual energy overflowing from his cultivation had also been increasing. Therefore, Han Fei's intuition was that the resources were being consumed too fast. Fortunately, Xia Xiaochan still had 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Otherwise, Han Fei would have to rob some heavenly talents. On this day, in the outer sea of the Taishan heaven, Han Fei held 2 black kitchen knives in his hands. Since he learned the knife-drawing technique, he rarely used real knives. He always used whatever he wanted. It seemed that everything could be used. But at this moment, Han Fei used kitchen knives again, naturally to cultivate the yin-yang reincarnation knife. Swish, Han Fei raised his hands, and the 2 knives shot out. A shining knife shadow broke through the void. In addition to this shining knife shadow, there was also a strange knife mark that seemed to be blooming in the void. Of course, it could also be discovered in the void, but it was much weaker than the black fog body. Han Fei's opponent was a purple shield wall. Yes, in order to urge Master Hexagon to cultivate, Han Fei directly used it to block the knife. With a clang, the 6-gate formation trembled 3 times before it finally blocked Han Fei's attack. However, as soon as this knife was blocked by the 6-gate formation, an identical knife light pierced through the void. From the same angle, with the same force, it continued to slash at the six-gate formation. The whole process was less than a second. In addition to this pure yang knife, there was also an invisible blade of extreme yin, which collapsed outside the six-gate formation. "Help!" the hexagon starfish shouted. "Xia Xiaochan, help! Han Fei is going to kill starfish. The formation is about to break. However, on the deck, Xia Xiaochan was holding a green date or some kind of fruit in her hand. She took a bite and ate it with relish. She said, "Big starfish, come on, you can do it." Nian shouted, "Starfish, come on, you can do it." Yin tilted her head and looked at Nian. "Nian, is this really okay?" Starfish is asking for help. Seeing Yin sympathizing with him, Xia Xiaochan immediately said, "He has thick skin and thick flesh. When he calls for help, he just says that he suffered a normal blow. If he really needs help, he won't call for help." Yin wondered, then what will he call for? On the deck, the two had just talked for a while. The pure yang knife had appeared 6 times. The extreme yin blade had also appeared 6 times. The explosion outside the six-gate formation had already been the 6th time. Crack, crack, crack. More and more cracks appeared on the six-gate formation. Seeing that the six-gate formation might not be able to resist it, Starfish screamed, "Damn it, damn it, damn it, this time Starfish really can't make it." Seeing this scene, Xia Xiaochan immediately looked at Yin and said, "Look, this is what he will shout when he really feels that he is in danger." Crack, BM, when the six-gate formation of Master Hexagon Starfish was completely broken, Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the remaining yin-yang reincarnation power dissipated. Han Fei frowned and said, "Master Hexagon Starfish, your current strength is too weak. In the same realm, you can't even take one knife from me. What kind of mysterious creature are you? You are discrediting mysterious creatures. Do you know that?" The Hexagon Starfish was speechless. "You call that one knife? You slashed me 12 times. 6 times to break the formation and 6 times to kill the soul. Who is as fierce as you?" However, Han Fei was still a little dissatisfied. This yin-yang reincarnation knife was really strong, but after all, he had only learned it for a short time. From the annihilation of one knife to the reappearance of another, the interval was too long, nearly one breath. This was also the reason why he was not proficient in it. Han Fei shook his head slightly. "Okay, let's do it again. This time, I will use the strength of an intermediate peak-level venerable to use this knife. Try to take it." Hearing this, the Hexagon Starfish flew away with a swish and immediately shouted, "Starfish is going to make a breakthrough. Starfish has been slashed by you for several days. Today, I feel that the opportunity has come, and I'm going to make a breakthrough." Han Fei said disdainfully, "It's not a breakthrough. It's just a breakthrough of a small level. After the breakthrough, let's continue." After a while, when the Hexagon Starfish was about to make a breakthrough, Xia Xiaochan said, "Should we set off?" Han Fei thought for a while and nodded slightly. 2 months have passed. It's time to go to the Martial Emperor City. Half a day later, when a large ship with a skeleton pirate ship appeared outside the Grand Mystery Heaven, it took less than a quarter of an hour for Song Kaiyuan and the other 5 to arrive. They had been waiting for as long as 2 months. Now, they were very curious about the Avengers, especially Mu Shi. Her heart was extremely complicated. Is this person really Shui Zhan? When they approached the Avengers, Song Kaiyuan cupped his hands towards the ship and said, "Immortal Master, we are here." On the ship, a leisurely voice said, "Come on board. In addition, my name is Han Fei. Call me Captain from now on. Remember not to call me wrong. There is no Immortal Master here." Song Kaiyuan immediately cupped his hands. "Understood. Okay." Han Fei's voice was leisurely. "There is a great technique on the table on the deck. You can learn it first." Confused, they boarded the Avengers. When Song Kaiyuan got this great technique, he couldn't help but gasp. God-deceiving precious technique. A divine quality concealment technique? Song Kaiyuan was stunned. F***CK. This is a super great technique that can't even be found in the Sutra Tower. But it was casually thrown out by Han Fei. Han Fei said, "This technique is limited to the members of the Avengers. Once it is leaked and discovered by me, you will be killed without mercy. Besides, once you choose to practice this technique, each of you will owe me 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones for learning this technique." Wow, everyone gasped. "We've just boarded the ship and haven't even seen you yet, and we already owe you 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones?" Song Kaiyuan was speechless. Sure enough, as expected of the black and white ghosts, they haven't changed at all. Chapter 1820. Within the sphere of influence of Taishian heaven, it was likely to be under the control of the lords. Han Fei was alone in a strange place, so he had to be careful. After they boarded the ship, they didn't find anyone on board. However, after they boarded, the ship automatically activated the void teleportation. When they crossed hundreds of thousands of miles, Song Kaiyuan and the others were speechless. Mu Shui Cece said, "Isn't this the route of our Taishian heaven? Someone has opened up a new route near our Taishian heaven?" Song Kaiyuan said lightly, "This is not surprising. Although the route of our 4 immortal palaces is relatively hidden, it's not to the point where we can't find it." Although Han Fei had reached an agreement with Lu Yu and the others on the surface. However, as long as he didn't become a king, he couldn't compare with the masters of these immortal palaces. Therefore, before becoming a king, Han Fei would never be exposed to the sphere of influence of others. As for this route, it was naturally left by Xian Feng for him. However, the route left by Xian Feng finally turned to the route of the witch pirates and eventually led to the martial emperor's city. Han Fei didn't want to have anything to do with the witch pirates now, and he didn't want more people to know about his relationship with the witch pirates. Therefore, Han Fei planned to use an abandoned route on this route map. This was a route that had been silent for a long time. This route had been abandoned for too long. Even Xian Feng only occasionally used this route to take a shortcut and rarely used it in its entirety. In fact, this route originally belonged to the 9 Palace Heaven. The first half of the route had disappeared without a trace, but the second half of the route was still there. Although the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven had been moved away from the chaotic ocean, the 9 Palace Heaven was still there. The 9 Palace Heaven didn't enter a closed state at the beginning, but was gradually targeted and forced into a closed state. Because of this, many villages and towns in the 9 Palace Heaven had disappeared, and the population had plummeted. The 9 Palace Heaven had fought back, but in the end, 2 fists couldn't defeat 4 hands. In the end, the 9 Palace Heaven couldn't even be found. However, their route was preserved. With the disappearance of the 9 Palace Heaven, the route was gradually abandoned. Xian Feng knew the 9 Palace Heaven very well. She even knew part of the route of the Yin-Yang Heaven. However, there seemed to be a problem with the route of the Yin-Yang Heaven, and it was completely abandoned. 2 hours later, before Song Kaiyuan and the others saw Han Fei, they felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, with a hum, 2 figures appeared on the mast. Everyone was very surprised by Han Fei's appearance. They were both half-king realms, but why were they so excellent? The 2 people who appeared on the mast were Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei smiled and said lazily, "Welcome to the Avengers. I wonder, do you like this greeting gift?" Of course, everyone knew what Han Fei was talking about, except for the god-deceiving precious technique. What else could it be? Li Kaitian said, "Captain, this thing is good. But isn't the price a little too expensive?" Among the people on this trip, Li Kaitian was the most straightforward. Even Mu, she was more flexible than Li Kaitian. Han Fei frowned. "You think it's too expensive?" It was merely 1,000,000 top-grade spirit stones. If he wanted to buy supreme-grade divine weapons, he would only buy 20 or 30 of them. But what did you get in exchange? A divine quality technique. How dare you tell me it's expensive? You owe me 100,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Li Kaitian. Everyone, Mu Shui Cece couldn't help glancing at her senior brother. Song Kaiyuan immediately smiled and said, "Captain, it's not expensive. A divine quality technique is extremely rare even in the Sutras Tower. How can it be compared with 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones?" Song Kaiyuan was speechless to Li Kaitian. Don't you know this guy's temper? Is there anyone in the entire chaotic ocean that he doesn't dare to rob? The others didn't speak, and they all looked at Han Fei in different ways. Song Kaiyuan's heart was as clear as a mirror. He had a very accurate grasp of this guy's identity, strength, and means. Li Kaitian was fined money as soon as he boarded the ship, mainly because he challenged the captain's status and prestige. Jian Hui looked at Han Fei with soaring fighting intent in his eyes. He actually regarded Han Fei as a powerful opponent. As for Mu Shui Cece, Lu Ran, and Mu Shi, they were discussing in secret. Mu Shui Cece exclaimed, "Hey, I don't quite believe that this person is a bit like Shui Zhan. The temperaments of these two people are obviously different." Lu Ran added, "Just look at the god-deceiving precious technique. It's a venerable level, divine quality technique that's best at hiding itself. Since his identity has been exposed, there's no way he can escape. Otherwise, do you think the 4 palace masters are all wrong about him?" Mu Shi said, "I can tell that he's not a good guy. If I had known that he was such a person, I wouldn't have given him that sun moon shell." After what happened last time, Mu Shi just thought that Shui Zhan was just a cold-hearted person and didn't hold a grudge. But now it seemed that this guy was clearly a liar. Now, he was standing in front of her openly, as if he didn't know her. Of course, what made Mu Shi say this was because she glanced at Xia Xiaochan sitting on the mast from time to time. Today, who didn't know that Xia Xiaochan was the princess of the mermaid royal family? Everyone marveled at Han Fei's audacity, but the girls didn't have a good impression of Xia Xiaochan at all. Lu Ran said, "Cece, do you want to try again?" Mu Shui Cece said, "Do you want to die? Try again at this time?" The princess of the mermaid royal family. Alas, with one order, she killed everyone. Although I support Cece very much, in my opinion, let's forget about this matter. Han Fei thought to himself, "You 3, do you think I can't hear you talking here?" Immediately, Han Fei's eyes fell on the 3 of them, and the look in his eyes was self-evident. Mu Shui Cece immediately said, "Not good. He can hear us." Immediately, Lu Ran and Mu Shi trembled and stopped talking. However, they were secretly speechless. Isn't this guy not a king yet? How can he even hear the voice transmission of people in our realm? "Humph," Han Fei snorted softly. "On this trip, the palace masters asked you to go on the Avenger. Although I don't quite understand his intentions. But from today on, where the Avenger goes, what to do, you just need to cooperate unconditionally. You will do what you should do. I will give you the rewards you deserve. Don't question my judgment, don't question my orders." Han Fei grinned and looked into the distance. "Let's go." Half a month later, in a place shrouded in mist, the waves on the sea surged one after another. The 9-palace sky, the route that was almost abandoned, was really not easy to take. Along the way, they encountered as many as 7 half-king realm sea creatures. On this day, the sea was foggy, and the surrounding spiritual energy was thin. Everyone had a bad feeling. Song Kaiyuan said, "Captain, there seems to be something wrong with this route. Even the most dangerous route generally won't have so many powerful creatures in a row. However, so many half-king realm creatures have appeared on this route. This one seems more difficult to deal with than the other sea demons." Han Fei said lightly, "Don't talk nonsense. When the enemy comes, it's over. Just wait." Ooh. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, just as the Avenger was about to complete a void shift, suddenly, dozens of black shadows appeared in the water. Han Fei frowned slightly. "Get ready to fight. A group of lightning dragon eels dare to provoke the Avenger? Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all." Hiss! Everyone's face turned green. Damn, there must be more than 20 of them. Kill them all? Is this something the few of us can do? Hoop! Huge figures emerged from the seawater one after another. It was no exaggeration to say that one of their heads was as big as 2 Avengers. Their bodies were nearly 10,000 meters long. At this point, the lightning dragon eels attacked, and Han Fei didn't take action. What could Song Kaiyuan and the others do? They could only take action. Clang at the moment when the lightning dragon eel came out of the water, Sword Regret burst out with a soaring sword chi. As soon as the sword was out, the world was eclipsed. The power of that sword was traceless. Only a touch of brilliant light flashed. Buzz, buzz, boom, in front of the lightning dragon eel. Dazzling lightning blasted down. The two fought extremely fast. At this moment, the giant lightning dragon eel's body was cut open by a sword. A massive amount of lightning exploded in all directions. In an instant, this sea area became a sea of lightning. Li Kaition roared and leaped out with the silver rod in his hand. The shadow of the rod was tens of thousands of meters long, and its power was so overwhelming that the sea was temporarily flattened. It's just lightning. How can it be so fierce? Wow. So King. Exciting. Bam! Bam! Li Kaition smashed the head of a lightning dragon eel with his rod. But at least 100 bolts of lightning shrouded him and instantly blew him up into an iron-head fish. Lu Ran cried, "Ow! Ow! I hate lightning." The fall of several lightning dragon eels caused the surrounding lightning dragon eels to burst in thunderous lightning at the same time. Not only the lightning dragon eels themselves were bursting with lightning. Above the sky, lightning was also falling. Han Fei looked at the people who were stunned by the lightning, knowing that these lightning couldn't kill them. After all, not all of them were half-king realm creatures. Among them, only 7 had reached the half-king realm, and Sword Regret and Li Kaition each killed one. A figure quietly stood on the head of a lightning rod dragon eel. She raised the daggers in both hands, and the super giant eel that was more than 600 meters wide fell apart. That person was none other than Xia Xiaochan. When countless lightning bolts fell, Xia Xiaochan activated her pure mystic body and was instantly bathed in the terrifying lightning. Mu Shui Cc, Lu Ran, and Mu Shi also rushed to their targets. Seeing that they should be fine, Han Fei immediately appeared in the sky, thousands of meters high. Han Fei raised his hand, took out the embroidery needle, and shouted, "Big, big, big!" Chapter 1821. In the ocean, the greatest danger came from the unknown. However, for a person like Han Fei, a person who always looked for trouble, a mere fierce beast invasion was nothing to him. When Han Fei saw the power of thunder, he decided to leave the lightning-attracting dragon eels to Song Kaiyuan and the others, but he had another idea in his mind. The embroidery needle in Han Fei's hand had become a giant pillar, a super lightning rod. From all directions, above the sky, everyone's thunder was pouring into Han Fei's body. At that moment, the terrifying power that Han Fei endured made Li Kaition drool with envy. Li Kaition smacked his lips. So strong. In the past half-month, the way the 3 girls looked at Han Fei had changed. Others took the route hoping not to encounter danger. But Han Fei only hoped that more and more fierce beasts would come to hunt. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. On Han Fei's shoulder, he heard a big starfish roaring. Its 6 tentacles were all smoking. The lumps on the starfish's body were all exposed by the electricity. Han Fei shouted, "Don't open the shield. Grow bigger." Han Fei grabbed the hexagon starfish and threw it into the sky. In an instant, the starfish became 100 meters in size. How dare it not obey Han Fei's words? BM, 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 BM. Han Fei went up and punched and kicked it. The hexagon starfish had never experienced this before. In an instant, it was hammered thousands of times by Han Fei. Immediately afterward, Han Fei launched the Monkey King 3,000 strikes again. "Help! Kill the starfish, Xia Xiaochan. Help me," Han Fei snorted. "Today, even if you scream yourself hoarse, it's useless. What happened to the energy accumulated in your body? If I don't help you break through today, this will never be over." Below, the lightning-attracting dragon eels were not idiots. After all, most of the strong masters on their side were killed. So of course they had to escape. When they saw the animal in the sky, they instantly understood this idea. This is not a human at all. He didn't even spare their starfish. How would he let them go? They knew that if they had been a step slower, they would have died. The battle only lasted for 100 seconds, and the hexagon starfish was almost stunned by Han Fei. Every time Han Fei struck with the rod, the power of lightning poured into its body. The massive amount of energy accumulated in his body was being consumed at a crazy rate, and his spiritual energy was also dispersing at a crazy rate. The 100-meter-long starfish was beaten to 80 meters and all kinds of blood and pulp were spraying. A moment later, everyone's eyelids twitched. Even Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but narrow her eyes. She thought to herself, this big starfish has been living a happy life for decades. This time he was beaten back in one go. Crack! In mid-air, the big starfish was beaten to a pulp. This guy was like a deflated balloon, and half of the impurities in his body had been removed by Han Fei. When Han Fei put away the embroidery needle, he saw that the hexagon starfish had clung to Xia Xiaochan's calf with a swish, shivering. It's terrible. Starfish wants to go home. Starfish wants to return to the mermaid royal family. Han Fei glared at him. What did you say? Starfish, Xia Xiaochan scoffed. Why didn't you move before? You pushed him away and pulled him back. Now you've made a breakthrough, haven't you? Han Fei said leisurely. This time, I took the opportunity to help you temper. If you don't cultivate from today on, I don't mind helping you cultivate once a month. The effect should be similar. The 6 big eyes of the hexagon starfish rolled frantically, and his body shook violently several times. He quickly said, cultivate. From today on, starfish will start cultivating. Han Fei added, well, at most half a year. If you can't break through to the peak level of the venerable realm, I will help you by then. Han Fei was also mentally exhausted. According to the hexagon starfish's intake of resources, it was much happier than those who were looking for opportunities between life and death. Mysterious beings like them grew up extremely quickly. There was even no such thing as polishing the foundation like humans. The situation of each race was different. For creatures like humans, their growth might be accompanied by their own polishing. But for the hexagon starfish, perhaps their polishing method was another, such as how much energy they absorbed. Li Kaitian and the others couldn't help looking around. Now, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan didn't bother to hide their identities in front of them. Even the hexagon starfish, the mysterious creature, had been taken out to teach them a lesson. In the past, who would have known that a mysterious creature like the hexagon starfish would be beaten like this? Now, they finally discovered that Han Fei was used to being domineering. Anyone who came over would be taught a lesson. Song Kaiyuan said, Captain, I feel that there is something wrong with our route. Although this lightning-attracting dragon eel is strong, it seems that the crisis has passed. However, the danger that shrouds this sky doesn't seem to be over yet. Mui Shui Cece also said, Captain, senior brother is right. I still have a bad feeling. Han Fei said grumpily, if we run when we encounter difficulties, are we still pirates? We're pirates. Pirates on the sea. Not only other ships, but also the 100 demons, the giant beast clan, the mermaid royal family, and the human race. Even these sea demons and fierce beasts are also our targets. With that, Han Fei pulled his fishing hook, and a 10,000-meter-long dragon eel was hooked over. The illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, and the dragon eel disappeared into the illusion. Song Kaiyuan and Mui Shui Cece looked at each other. Both of them realized that this was the sea-quelling painting. However, it made sense. Han Fei was the master of the yin-yang heaven, so it was understandable that he had the sea-quelling painting of the yin-yang heaven. Han Fei ignored them. In fact, Han Fei also knew that there might be more powerful existences on his route. However, this route had already reached this point. If they wanted to change routes, it was impossible. Could he use the nautical panorama to choose a new direction? That would definitely delay him. By the time he arrived at the Martial Emperor's city, the Martial Emperor's inheritance might have already passed. And the reason why there were so many powerful enemies on this route was that it had been abandoned for a long time. Even so, it was originally a route, right? Therefore, it must be possible. Instead of opening up a new route, it was better to open up this old route. In fact, Han Fei's idea was logical. Han Fei shouted, Li Kaitian, void teleportation. With an order, the Avenger broke through the void and entered. However, the moment the Avenger broke through the void, except for Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, everyone on the ship was shocked. They saw a giant beast blocking the route. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan couldn't be more familiar with this giant beast. It turned out to be a mantis shrimp. However, this mantis shrimp had black and white stripes, a body width of more than 100 kilometers, and a body length of more than 500 kilometers. Suddenly, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name, Dark Mantis, Shrimp. Introduction, Dark Mantis Shrimp, a kind of giant beast left from the ancient times. The Dark Mantis Shrimp is violent, irritable, and very aggressive. It is aggressive to many creatures. Its power is extremely terrifying, and its punches are astonishingly fast. Its punches are hidden in the void and are difficult to detect. After transforming into a human, the Dark Mantis Shrimp is good at hiding. Level 91, Quality, Ancient Mutant, Realm, Sea Expansion, Path, Speed, contains Chaotic Chi, 1962, Combat Skills, Void-Breaking Fist, Nerve Knife, Worldly Spirit Hammer, Universe-Piercing Armor. Food, like shellfish, crustaceans, collectible Dark Arm, Dark Eye, Mantis Armor, Distance, Absorbable. Remarks, the Dark Mantis Shrimp is extremely fast. If you can't keep up with it, you will be easily killed. Even Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. The last time he saw such a big creature was when he saw the king crab. Although the mantis shrimp was much smaller than the king crab, it was still relative. Compared with Han Fei's boat, in the eyes of the mantis crab, it was probably just a sesame seed. Han Fei also keenly captured a few pieces of information. The giant beast could transform into human beings. This meant that the giant beast bloodline was not limited to maintaining a gigantic body. In addition, after transforming into human beings, the way they were good at fighting was slightly different. Jin Hui's voice was cold. Giant beasts, adult giant beasts. Mu Shui's Cece exclaimed. It's a dark mantis shrimp. It's so big. Has it already reached the sea expansion realm? Mu Shi exclaimed. How can we fight it? How can there be such a king of giant beasts on the route? Lu Ren glanced at Han Fei. Get ready to fight. Prepare for the king's strike. While the others were all on guard, Xia Xiaochan held the dagger with both hands, supported herself on the horizontal bar of the mast, and swung her calves. She turned her head and looked at Han Fei. The sea expansion realm. Do you want to fight it? Han Fei said, Let me do it. Xia Xiaochan narrowed her eyes and said, I want to feel the power of the sea expansion realm. If I can't, I will retreat. Han Fei shook his head. Even if you use the heavenly cicada transformation, you can't resist 50% of the power of the sea expansion realm. Xia Xiaochan was surprised. Even the lowest level of the sea expansion realm can have the power of 60,000 waves. Han Fei looked at the dark mantis shrimp. How strong was this thing at level 91? He didn't know. The king crab was so weak because it was on the verge of death. Besides, if the king crab had used its last resort, ordinary kings in the sea expansion realm wouldn't have dared to fight it head-on. The dark mantis shrimp in front of him was a giant beast, so its power must be no less than 60,000 waves. So Han Fei asked, Do other kings have it? I don't know, but this dark mantis shrimp, they definitely have it. Chapter 1822. Fuse. As soon as he answered Xia Xiaochan, Han Fei fused with Little Black and Little White and shouted, Girl, retreat. Song Kaiyuan gasped and shouted, It's a wild king. Li Kaitian, retreat. Everything happened too fast. When Han Fei found that the dark mantis shrimp was using the great Tao of speed, he realized that something was wrong. After Han Fei fused with Little Black and Little White, he saw a ray of light sweeping across the sky. However, it was not light, but the dark mantis shrimp's hooking limbs, intending to split the Avenger in half. Han Fei immediately activated the Great Tao of Time. A blue barrier appeared directly in front of the Avenger. At this moment, everyone saw that it was a huge sickle that was charging towards them. Oh my God, Li Kaitian and the others couldn't help exclaiming. This scene was too horrifying to watch. The incomparably huge super forlim was hundreds of miles long. It stretched out in front of the Avenger like a hook hanging down from the sky. Jianhui couldn't help but hold the sword in his hand. His body became hot and his palms were sweating. Xia Xiaochan's face changed greatly. So fast, although she saw that it was a huge limb, it was not very clear. Xia Xiaochan felt that if this attack was aimed at her, she would only have time to turn into a shadow at most. After the dark mantis shrimp's attack was slowed down by time, Han Fei activated his spiritual energy in an instant. Han Fei's figure appeared 100 kilometers away in an instant, holding a blue blade of light. Puff! At that moment, Han Fei extracted the power of time and slashed the limb, only to see a 7 or 8 kilometers long limb cut off. Behind Han Fei, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. This huge limb fell into it and was suppressed by Han Fei with a thought. Your Excellency is a little too anxious. How can my Avengers be destroyed so easily? Have you asked me for my permission? Gulp, Mui Shui Cece couldn't help swallowing. Wow, is this the legendary Great Tao of Time? How could it be so tyrannical? I didn't even see that attack, and Captain actually lost a limb? Sword regrets, eyelids twitched. Too fast. Whether it was the Dark Knight Mantis Shrimp Strike or Han Fei's slash, they were all too fast for him to react. Judging from the intensity of the attacks from both sides, Jianhui helplessly realized that if he were to give it his all, it would probably be the same. It would be impossible for it to be stronger. Only then did Jianhui realize that he didn't want to compete with Han Fei. It was really ridiculous. His strongest attack was no match for his opponent's ordinary attack. How was he supposed to fight? Lu Ran and Mu Shi both widened their eyes and exchanged a look. It seemed that they could see several questions in each other's eyes that went straight to their souls. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? The hexagon starfish shuddered and rolled its 6 big eyes crazily. Is the world of the strong all like this? Isn't this strength a little too strong? If the mantis shrimp's claw slashed on my 6-gate formation, the hexagon starfish's eyes froze, and he quickly came to a conclusion. I absolutely can't resist it, nor can I escape. However, such an ending seemed to be beyond the mantis shrimp's expectation. A hoarse and stiff voice sounded between heaven and earth. The Great Tao Time? Human, have you touched the legendary level? Han Fei sneered. Legendary level? I am a legendary level. Get out of my way. Otherwise, it's hard to say who will die in the battle. Although Han Fei was a little confident, he couldn't be too tough in the face of a pioneer sea state master. If he were alone, he would definitely ignore this mantis shrimp and even take the initiative to provoke it and fight it for hundreds of rounds. However, the mantis shrimp's attack was so fast that he didn't even have time to put away the Avenger and the others. How arrogant. I like to see what kind of taboo the Great Tao of Time is. Bam! Bam! As soon as he said that, a pair of fist marks blasted at him at the speed of light. It was no exaggeration to say that even though Han Fei had reacted with the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes and the Great Tao of Time slowed down the speed of the 2 fists, Han Fei's body still couldn't keep up with the speed of the fists. However, Han Fei knew the mantis shrimp too well. No matter how fast your punches are, the weak points were at the very end of the forelimb, where the joints were. Therefore, Han Fei had already prepared a knife attack. Han Fei didn't know when he had been holding 2 knives in his hands. The 2 knives seemed to break through the void in an instant, turning into dazzling knife marks, and directly appeared at the very end of the mantis shrimp's joints. The dark mantis shrimp didn't expect Han Fei to be so tough. In the face of its high-speed punches, Han Fei could so calmly shatter 2 ultra-quality divine weapons and exchange blows with it. Bam! Han Fei had already predicted how strong the punch of the dark mantis shrimp would be. Under such a terrifying punching speed, he might not be able to withstand a punch at all. However, in front of the Great Tao of Time, it was just a matter of a wisp of chaotic energy to withstand this punch. Han Fei's body exploded in an instant. However, before Xia Xiaochan and the others panicked, they saw a cluster of blue shadows emerging. Immediately afterward, Han Fei's figure appeared again. At this moment, even Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim that the time light technique was so F***ing useful. Han Fei even wondered how old Monster Chu could comprehend such a great technique. Han Fei guessed that he must have obtained it from the 9-star pearl. Fortunately, old Monster Chu was killed by him. Otherwise, if that guy really became a king, not to mention the Yin-Yang Heaven, even the 36 Black Heavens might not be able to kill him. Who? On the Avenger that was retreating rapidly, Everyone swallowed involuntarily. What a terrifying power. Even a freak like Han Fei was blown up in an instant. How strong was the dark mantis shrimp? The hexagon starfish murmured, "Starfish, I need to work hard on cultivation. It's too scary. This world is too scary." Xiao Xiaochan scolded, "Shut up. If you keep talking, I'll throw you to the battlefield." While talking, Xiao Xiaochan held the daggers and knives, and the blood in her body kept rising. A battle of this level had aroused her desire to fight. She was calculating that if she fused the shadow shrimp and the giant arowana at the same time after activating the heavenly cicada transformation, she should be able to fight it. However, the premise was that she couldn't be hit by the mantis shrimp. Otherwise, she might be hammered half to death with just one hit. On the other side, Han Fei blocked the blow of the dark mantis shrimp head-on. Within 10,000 kilometers, the terrifying twin hammers made the sea swirl, and the waves splashed for thousands of kilometers. To the dark mantis shrimp's surprise, the yin-yang reincarnation knife also hit it. Crack, poof, with only one slash, the joint of the dark mantis shrimp's forelimb was cut off by Han Fei. Not only was its forelimb cut off, but the blade of nothingness also cut its soul. Hiss, roar, the dark mantis shrimp thought that it was a sea expansion realm expert. How could it be beaten to this extent by a half-king human? Immediately, it was furious. As soon as its soul collided with Han Fei's blade of nothingness, a soul explosion was set off. Just when it was about to take back its broken limb, Han Fei took a step and turned into a golden giant with a fist mark in his hand, which was attached to an array. Sacrificing punch. Seeing that Han Fei dared to take the initiative to attack it, the dark mantis shrimp immediately hammered at him, even though only had one forelimb left. In midair, even though they were very far away, they could still see a surge of power tearing through the sky, creating a spatial crack that was thousands of miles long. Li Kaitian swallowed his saliva and said, "Should we retreat further away? This power is too terrifying. We're thousands of kilometers away, but it still hit us." Song Kaiyuan nodded. "No, just be ready to teleport at any time. The captain's strength is extraordinary. He is not at a disadvantage in this battle. Instead, he has a slight advantage. Our side has a good chance of winning." Song Kaiyuan's words shocked everyone. That was a real king in the sea expansion realm. Their captain was only a half-king, but he still had the upper hand. This put a lot of pressure on them. If their captain was too strong, they would be too weak. On the battlefield, Han Fei took the punch head-on, but he was also dripping with blood. But so what? Poochie, all of a sudden, the dark mantis shrimp was surprised to find that the broken part of its forelimb was slashed with the same blade power as just now. At the same time, another blade of nothingness slashed at the dark mantis shrimp. Seizing the opportunity, Han Fei quickly came to the broken forelimb of the dark mantis shrimp. The illusion of mountains and rivers appeared and swallowed the 100-kilometer-long forelimb into the sea-quelling painting. At this moment, Han Fei roared. Within 1,000 kilometers, the sea surged, and infinite blades soared into the sky. Under the blade of blade purgatory, the sea was enveloped by blade light. Holding the blade of time, Han Fei dove into the blade purgatory and attacked the other forelimb of the dark mantis shrimp. Han Fei roared, come on, if you dare, try to be arrogant with me again. Let's see how many lives you have." Hiss! On the other side, the dark mantis shrimp had just suppressed Han Fei's violent attack. The blade of time was too strong, and it found that it couldn't defeat it at all. Chapter 1823. Clang, clang, clang. Thousands of blades fell on the shell of the night mantis shrimp almost every second. Of course, this was nothing. No matter how strong the blade purgatory was, it was not strong enough to kill a king. The battle between Han Fei and the dark night mantis shrimp had just reached its climax. With the power of the yin-yang reincarnation knife, Han Fei tricked it once. But Han Fei's follow-up actions were very fast. He continuously summoned the chaotic energy and attacked with all his strength, not giving the night mantis shrimp a chance to counterattack. Pooh! Spirit Stunning Spike and Heaven Knocking Gate were also activated at the same time. However, At this moment, a white explosion of light came crashing down from the sky. Han Fei saw that the white light seemed to be a fist mark, and he immediately thought that it must be the night mantis shrimp's universal spirit hammer. In the end, Han Fei sighed slightly. His advantage would probably be beaten back by this hammer. Han Fei immediately picked up 2 sledgehammers and smashed them across the air. Dong, 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 Han Fei glided in the sky, and the shadows of his hammers filled the sky. Down below, 10,000 miles away, Mushui Sisi exclaimed, "This is the 100 Battles Godly Hammer?" The legendary top-notch hammer technique of the war giants during the Age of Chaos? Song Kayun's expression was also solemn as he said, "The super great arts of the Age of Chaos are much stronger than the great arts of the present." At that time, he would probably have to demote his current great technique by 1 level. Not only can this hammer technique be used for battle, it can also be used for forging. Its peak effect is probably not much worse than Lei Huitian's forging technique. Li Kaitian said in surprise, "You're fighting the king of the giant beasts alone? If Captain were to transcend the tribulation and become a king, how strong would he be?" Suddenly, Mushi said, "Xia Xiaochan is missing." Xia Xiaochan didn't formally introduce herself to these people. When she wanted to hide, it would be hard for Song Kaiyuan and the others to discover her. Usually, if one didn't deliberately pay attention, it would be difficult to notice that she was gone. As soon as Mushi's voice fell, a strange cicada cry came from the battlefield. Amidst the blades that filled the sky, there were many colors that looked like colored glaze. Then, everyone saw countless colorful lights flashing on the back of the night mantis shrimp. When he took a closer look, what kind of light was that? It was clearly an optical illusion created by a person moving too fast. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't help but look at each other. Mushui Sisi exclaimed in surprise, "Really? Another half-martial king that could defeat kings?" Song Kaiyuan shook his head. "We haven't reached that point yet." Xia Xiaochan was holding a sea-quelling bizarre treasure in her hand, and sharp metal energy rushed into the night mantis shrimp's body. Besides, due to her special identity, her spiritual beast is only powerful enough to break the shell of the night mantis shrimp. Swish! While everyone was talking, a figure shot out of the ship with a whoosh. Lu Ren shouted, "Jin Hui, why are you joining the fun again?" However, Li Kaitian grinned. "Don't stop him. A half-king fighting a king. If he missed this opportunity, there would be no more." Sword regret. This fellow had been fervently brewing his sword intent since just now. He won't stop until he slashes out with his sword. Boom, boom, boom. The hammer in the sky was hit by Han Fei's twin hammers 100 times in a row and finally completely penetrated. However, the 2 sledgehammers in Han Fei's hands were also blocked. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. It seems that ultra-quality divine weapons are completely not enough. It's a waste of weapons to fight with kings. Or rather, it's a waste of weapons to fight with such special behemoth kings. He had already destroyed 4 of these supreme-grade divine weapons. This is not enough. Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan, who turned into a stream of light on the back of the night mantis shrimp, lifting countless pieces of flesh and blood. The speed of the heavenly cicada transformation gave Xia Xiaochan, at this moment, a huge force of at least 30,000 waves. And this night mantis shrimp didn't specialize in physical strength, but just had its own shell. Therefore, it couldn't completely stop Xia Xiaochan. However, Han Fei immediately said to her via voice transmission, "Girl, retreat." Han Fei's voice reminded Xia Xiaochan. Colorful light appeared all over the sky, and Xia Xiaochan flashed hundreds of times in an irregular route in a breath. Hiss, roar, the night mantis shrimp had never experienced this before. If the other party was also in the sea expansion realm, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, the other party clearly only had the strength of a half-king. Was he beaten by a group of half-kings? He felt that his dignity had been insulted. His body suddenly rolled up, and his huge body turned into a super huge ball. On his body, the thorns that had been dormant were exposed at this moment. Within 1,000 kilometers, thousands of rolling thorns appeared. Although Xia Xiaochan had retreated fast enough, she couldn't catch up with the night mantis shrimp's attack range. Fortunately, Xia Xiaochan's reaction speed was relatively fast, and her unusually agile speed allowed her to avoid this weird attack. But Han Fei saw that this should be the universe-piercing technique of this night mantis shrimp. He quickly came to Xia Xiaochan, took her hand, and crossed 1,000 kilometers in one step, leaving this side of the battlefield. At this time, Han Fei saw a sword qi soaring into the sky, crossing thousands of kilometers. Oh no, it was brought here by Sword Regret from thousands of kilometers away. When Sword Regret approached Han Fei, he instantly drew his sword. Where Han Fei was should be the limit of his distance to the night mantis shrimp. If he went any closer, he would be courting death. Anyway, the body of the night mantis shrimp was too big, and Sword Regret was not afraid of missing. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. The sword chi of Sword Regret was so powerful. In terms of the power of this blow alone, it was comparable to the blow of a king like the White Armor Emperor. This strength was indeed terrifying. Even Xia Xiaochan was surprised. This guy is so strong. Even I may not be able to block this sword strike. Han Fei shook his head slightly. With his physique and strength, he can only make one sword strike at most. You stay here, and I'll go chop this shrimp. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei saw Sword Regret's sword strike, and the yin-yang reincarnation knife was still erupting on the battlefield. Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed a big wine pot. Xia Xiaochan recognized it at a glance. Wasn't that the big gourd that Han Fei picked up behind the bronze gate? How could it be used as a weapon? However, Han Fei held the gourd and said, "Big, big, big." However, the gourd didn't respond. Han Fei immediately added, "Kill him. It'll go with your wine." The gourd in Han Fei's hand suddenly became much fatter, from a half-foot-long gourd to a 100-meter-long gourd. The gourd continued to grow and suddenly became thousands of meters long. When the gourd was about to strike down, its body had grown to a terrifying size of more than 30 kilometers. Not to mention Xia Xiaochan and the others. Even Han Fei himself was dumbfounded. At this time, the gourd broke through the void, detonating the void, and flames swept the sky. The Dark Night Mantis shrimp thought to itself, "It's just a gourd. How can it turn the sky upside down? I'll smash it with one blow." Rumble, however, when the two collided, the entire body of the Dark Night Mantis shrimp was deformed. More than half of the Dark Night Mantis shrimp's carapace collapsed in an instant with a series of cracking sounds. Not good. In this terrifying explosion, Xia Xiaochan and Sword Regret consciously retreated. The two of them couldn't bear this thing. At this time, the immature knife technique of the yin-yang reincarnation knife continued to erupt. In an instant, a section of the mantis shrimp's body was cut off. The gigantic mantis shrimp suddenly turned into a cloud of mist. On the Avenger, the group of people looked at each other in shock. Li Kaitian exclaimed, "Wow, this is the Dark Night Mantis shrimp dead?" Lu Ran exclaimed, "Seriously? Did the captain kill a king?" Song Kaiyuan nodded. There were no weather changes. "I don't think so." At the scene, Han Fei frowned and saw the wine gourd open the stopper by itself. A huge section of the mantis shrimp's body was completely swallowed by this guy. Amidst the exploding fog, a young man dressed in black and wearing a white cloak could be seen. One of his arms was rapidly growing, and so were his two legs. This person looked at Han Fei across the air. Although he was reluctant, he could only flee with a dark face. This time, Han Fei didn't chase him. If he continued to fight, his Dao wouldn't be able to hold on. When the time was up, he would be even less of a match for this guy. Coincidentally, the half-baked yin-yang reincarnation knife burst out again at this moment, and the eyelids of the black-clothed young man twitched. Swish, when the black-clothed man disappeared in the void, the gourd also returned to its previous size. "You swallowed the mountain-like body of a king. How much did you leave for me?" Han Fei was speechless. "Big brother. Brother, I fought so hard and only got a plucked limb? UF Aster's king broke a small part of your body." Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. It was a pity that he didn't have enough chaotic energy. Otherwise, his chaotic energy would immediately soar to more than 4,000 wisps. When he became a king, he might have more than 5,000 wisps. It was a pity that it was just a plucked limb. It would be great if it had a few dozen wisps of chaotic energy. Han Fei returned from the center of the battlefield. Everyone looked at him as if he were a monster. Li Kaitian asked curiously, "Is the captain dead?" Han Fei said grumpily, "Dead? He ran away." Phew! Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he ran away. Otherwise, this captain of theirs would probably be able to kill a king by now. If the captain was so strong, why would he need the crew? Even so, they couldn't express their shock. A half-king had beaten a king away? If word of this got out, who would believe it? Han Fei said grumpily, "Continue to teleport. Half a day later, we'll have mantis shrimp hot pot." Chapter 1824. Although some beast kings have been driven away, Han Fei didn't dare to stay too long on the Nine-Palace Sky route. Who knew how many good friends he had? If they agreed to attack together, there would be no way to fight. Half a day later, the Avenger broke through the void and appeared on a relatively peaceful route. On this route, there were more kinds of sea creatures, and the pressure around them was gone. This was the common route of the Golden Crow Heaven. Because it was a common route, all the major pirate groups used it. The way to the Martial Emperor City was not a secret, and it could only be taken by the common route. Therefore, at this moment, Han Fei and the others had already gotten rid of the danger of the Nine-Palace Sky route. At this moment, Han Fei was deboning. He had cut off a complete stolen limb and brought back a stump, absorbing a total of 37 wisps of chaotic energy. At this moment, the hot pot was boiling. Baji, however, at this moment, Han Fei was eating alone, including Xia Xiaochan and the hexagon starfish. Everyone was already sitting cross-legged. Even though they were already half-beast kings, they couldn't bear eating 3 pots of king meat in a row. Of course, this meat couldn't directly help them break through. Xia Xiaochan was the first to wake up. Then, Sword Regret and the others woke up one after another. Han Fei said, "In another 3 days at most, we will reach the outskirts of Martial Emperor City. There are still about 15 days before the so-called invincible inheritance. In the next 15 days, it's time for you to start playing your role." Song Kaiyuan said, "Captain, the Martial Emperor City also has countless resources. Should we land in the Martial Emperor City first, take a look at the city, and then plunder?" Song Kaiyuan knew that Han Fei had the intention to plunder. For Han Fei, he could plunder anyone in the entire chaotic ocean. Song Kaiyuan even felt that with Han Fei's character, if he stayed in the chaotic ocean for a long time, he would definitely be among the top 10 pirate groups. If Han Fei made a breakthrough, he might even be among the top 3. Golden Crow Heaven on the normal sailing route. A ship made of red and yellow wood and inlaid with various special metals was slowly approaching. The captain was about 300 meters long, and there were as many as 21 venerable realm powerhouses on it. There was a sea expansion realm expert. At this moment, 2 young men were chatting at the bow of the ship. One of them was Xia Hai. One of them said, "Brother Hai, I heard that the Martial Emperor City didn't reject anyone this time. Why are there so few people from our Golden Crow Heaven?" Xia Hai chuckled. How could they all come at once? What kind of place was Martial Emperor City? The battle outside Martial Emperor City was endless, and the situation was treacherous. Unless a king comes to hunt us, it's extremely difficult for anyone to hunt us. So we'll go first. The real main force was still behind. It was said that Golden Crow Heaven had nearly 300 people on this trip. This number is already quite a lot. It already accounts for a small half of our Golden Crow Heavenly Venerables. Another person said with a smile, "Looks like the Martial Emperor's inheritance this time will be a fierce battle." If so many people from every clan came, wouldn't the Martial Emperor City become the place with the most prodigies in the entire chaotic Azure Ocean? Xia Hai laughed. "What do you think? Even without us going, Martial Emperor City is still the place with the most venerables in the chaotic Azure Ocean. Let's not talk about the 10 great pirate crews for now. Just the number of venerables from the 36 mysterious heavens and various races that have escaped over the years is uncountable." Another person said, I'm afraid there won't be many true prodigies this time. Last time, even Beidang Xian was seriously injured in the land of the king perished. I heard that he won't be able to come this time. Other than Wu Hao, Brother Hai, you are the best among all the prodigies. Humph. Xia Hai couldn't help but think of Shui Zhan's damn mask. The land of the king perished was an accident. Someone who shouldn't have snuck in. That bastard even abducted the merfolk royal family's princess. This time, it didn't matter even if they ran into each other. Because the martial emperor's inheritance shouldn't have a situation where powerhouses would clash. After all, an inheritance was an inheritance. It depended on who had more potential. This time, his chances were high. However, he had to admit that Shui Zhan wasn't easy to deal with. What a pity. How did that guy manage to sneak into the land of the king perished? How good would it be if he was killed? All of a sudden, the air trembled. Everyone saw a large black ship emerging from the void. Instantly, there was a commotion on the Golden Crow Sky's ship. It's the pirates. The Skull Flag. It's the Avengers. Prepare the fire essence cannons. Bang! However, before the Golden Crow Sky could make a move, the bow of the Avengers began to change shape. The bow opened up like the sharp teeth of a shark. A black bronze cannon barrel appeared. With a whoosh, a golden light shot out. Bang! Boom! Waves surged into the sky. A giant firebird soared into the sky above the Golden Crow Sky's ship. Boom! A terrifying Taoist rhyme that surpassed the power of a half-martial monarch surged out along with spiritual chi and bombarded the Golden Crow Sky's ship. However, the giant bird was covered in fire elemental energy. After 2 consecutive attacks, it was unable to break through the Golden Crow Sky ship formation. He had thought that the rumored Avenger was very powerful. Turns out they're just SOSO. Compared to our energy cannons, their energy cannons aren't much stronger. After all, they're just a small pirate group that's in the limelight. Destroy them. Xia Hai's eyes were cold as he shouted in a low voice. This Avengers is the culprit who killed Gold Yuan. How dare they rob the Golden Crow Sky today? Kill! Bam! This time, it was the fire essence cannon's turn to hit the Avengers. However, it was even more exaggerated this time. The Avengers clashed head-on with the fire essence cannon. The bow of the ship flickered, and the entire Avengers emerged from the billowing waves of fire. Seeing that the enemy's ship formation was not scary, Han Fei directly attacked. Han Fei broke through the void and slashed with his knife. The wings of the huge firebird formation were directly broken. Hiss! At this moment on the Golden Crow Sky, half-martial monarch exclaimed, "Not good. This man actually broke 30% of the Golden Crow formation with one slash. What kind of strength is this?" Xia Hai immediately took out a jade slip and shouted in a low voice, "Hold on. As long as you hold on for 5 minutes, when the King of Fire arrives, these people won't be able to escape." Xia Hai thought that as long as they could hold Han Fei for 5 minutes, it would be enough. Even the ship formation could last for 20 breaths of time. However, when Han Fei slapped the Golden Crow Sky ship formation more than 20 times in a row with terrifying power, Xia Hai's face changed. This man is so strong. In terms of strength, he is more than several times stronger than ordinary half-martial monarchs. At the moment when the ship formation was broken, the 21 people on the Golden Crow Sky all fused with their spiritual beasts at the same time, ready for a full-scale battle. Xia Hai, on the other hand, crushed a jade slip in his hand. Anyway, he just needed to wait for the King of Fire to arrive. If he resisted, he would be injured and lose the opportunity to obtain the martial emperor's inheritance. Wouldn't it be a pity? He might as well block this man with a king strike first. However, a figure wrapped in a fireball appeared in the void, blocking Han Fei's way. But Han Fei didn't panic. He shouted unhurriedly, "You want to enter the Avengers? It's time to test your strength. Attack and rob them for me." At this moment, Song Kaiyuan and the others had already practiced the deceiving precious technique. After changing their appearances, Xia Hai and the others couldn't see them at all. Besides, the Grand Mystic Palace, the Azure Glaze Palace, and the other 2 immortal palaces rarely showed up in the 36 mysterious heavens. Except for the place where the king perished once, they hadn't seen each other for hundreds of years. Of course, Xiaohai and the others didn't know what methods they had. Therefore, when fighting, they weren't afraid of exposing anything. Li Kaitian immediately roared, put away his rod, and took out 2 big axes. In addition to his rod skills, his axe blades were also unparalleled. At this moment, the giant axe was like a 100-meter-tall giant striking with all its strength, and the axe light fell from the sky, extremely sharp. Falling fire, heavenly fire meteor technique. The heavenly talent of the golden crow sky was naturally not weak. One of them was good at using shields. With a chain of fire shields in front of him, heavenly fire fell from behind and locked onto Li Kaitian. However, he underestimated Li Kaitian's ability. Naturally, he couldn't show his strength when fighting with Han Fei. However, when fighting with ordinary demi-king level cultivators, Li Kaitian stacked his double axes and penetrated with 6 layers of divine power. With a bang, this person was directly smashed into pieces. As for the fire meteorites behind him, Li Kaitian roared and a gelatinous shield shadow appeared, which remained intact no matter how the heavenly fire rained on it. And Sword Regret was quite relaxed. He had already been preparing his sword intent, and as soon as he slashed out, brilliance flashed. One person was killed, and a sun-moon shell fell into his hand. Lu Ran used her jade palm to crush one of the cultivators and his spiritual beast tortoise. Even Mu Shi, because she had prepared in advance and fused with her spiritual beast early. A thing called the Jellyfish Fairy had a thorn that could imprison the opponent in the first place. Immediately afterward, a white sword shadow appeared, and this person was also cut into pieces. Mu Shui Cece held a big bow in her hand, shot into the air, and there was a phoenix flying. Among the arrow patterns, there was an array superimposed. How could a woman who was spoiled by the academy not have any strength? At this time, Song Kaiyuan's sky-severing brush pierced out, directly encircling the 3 opponents into his domain. When the brush was drawn, there was an azure dragon, and when there was sword chi, there was sword chi. Facing Song Kaiyuan's stormy brush, these 3 people were blown up in an instant. At this moment, half of the powerhouses on the Golden Crow Sky ship were blown up immediately. Instead, he said leisurely, "This is a robbery. Hand over the Sun Moon shell, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, I'll kill you all." First, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1825. Xiaohai thought he was very strong, but he didn't know that no one on the Avenger was weaker than him. Xiaohai bellowed, "Don't hold back, everyone. Hold on. You're all half-kings. Don't tell me you can't even hold on for 5 minutes." However, after Xiaohai roared, his eyes suddenly blurred. Xiaohai's heart skipped a beat. Immediately afterward, Xiaohai felt a sharp pain in his spirit. His body split apart involuntarily. He immediately realized that there was a problem with his shadow. Something was cutting his shadow. Without hesitation, Xiaohai launched a divine soul attack, instantly unleashing a soul explosion in an attempt to force Xia Xiaochan out. However, a dragon's roar was heard. The dragon's roar exploded. Xiaohai felt his head was buzzing. He didn't have time to think. He didn't even know where the enemy was. The power of the fire element was detonated immediately, and the terrifying temperature swept across the world. However, in the midst of the flames, the shadow of a purple shield appeared and completely withstood his high-temperature attack. This was the defense array of the hexagon starfish, but Xiaohai couldn't see it. Puff, there was a flash of light, and Xiaohai's entire body was sliced into pieces. His divine soul, flesh, and blood were all shattered. In just a single exchange and a moment of carelessness, a dignified half-monarch had fallen to such a state. And the flame shadow in the sky glanced at the one-sided situation below and wanted to go down to help, but a fist shadow came at him. Boom! Under the punch, the strike of a king was immediately annihilated. The golden crows below were dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? Is Han Fei so strong? Not only is Han Fei's strength so terrifying that he can compete with a king, but the Golden Crows found that the strength of everyone on the Avenger was actually the strongest among the heavenly talents. The situation was almost one-sided. In such a situation, how could he fight back? At this time, Someone below finally couldn't bear it anymore. Someone shouted, "You just want the Sun Moon shell? Don't kill me. I'll give it to you." Han Fei sneered. "I'm going to rob this ship." Everyone. Li Kaition shouted, "Didn't you hear? We also took the ship." Han Fei casually pointed at Xia Hai's position and gave him another blow, heavily injuring Xia Hai, who had been reborn. A moment later, only 21 Golden Crow Heaven experts were left. They didn't even have a ship. The battle went on for 15 breaths before a fire-attributed shadow descended from the sky. The man shouted, "Where is he?" Xia Hai's face paled. "How the hell am I supposed to explain this?" He stammered, "Flame King, that Avenger group was too strong. We were completely wiped out. The Sun Moon shell and the ship have been robbed." As they spoke, everyone lowered their heads. It was simply too embarrassing. 21 of them had failed to stop 8 people. They had been slaughtered to the point where they couldn't even find their bearings anymore. The Flame Emperor's face darkened. "You're saying that so many of you were wiped out by 8 people in 30 breaths of time?" The Flame Emperor could not help but doubt the strength of Xia Hai and the others. Xia Hai's voice was calm and unhurried. "I've used your power, but—" The Flame Emperor raised his eyebrows. "But what? You're stammering. Just say it," Xia Hai said in a low voice. "They were defeated by Han Fei, the Avenger, in one move." The Flame Emperor, this time, the Flame Emperor had to take it seriously. This Avengers pirate group was originally a small pirate group that did not stand out. Although there was some news about them, they shouldn't be this strong, right? Didn't Han Fei, the Avenger, only have the strength of a half-king? What's going on? Even a half-martial king can easily sweep away my attack? The Flame Emperor pondered for a moment. "I'm afraid this Avenger is not simple. It can block my attack, which means that Han Fei has probably passed the tribulation and become a king. Plus, someone from the Martial Emperor's city captured him with 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures, which is enough to prove this." Seeing that Xia Hai seemed to be seriously injured, the Flame Emperor couldn't help but snort and throw out a 3rd tribulation pill. "Eat it. The Martial Emperor's inheritance is near. It's not a good thing to be injured now." Then, the Flame Emperor threw out a ship and said, "You don't have any clones, so I won't give you anything, lest you get robbed again. Just go. When we reach the Martial Emperor's city, I'll give you some resources. After all, the Avenger is not a bloodthirsty group. Otherwise, you would have been slaughtered by now. That would be tragic." What could Xia Hai and the others do? This was the only way. It was fortunate that the Avenger did not make a move. Otherwise, they would have been dead by now. On the other side, Xia Xiaochan asked curiously, "Why did you leave them all alive?" Han Fei smiled. "Although we made many enemies this time, there's no need to kill them yet. If we slaughter Xia Hai and the others now, the Golden Crow Heavenly King will definitely be furious. Maybe he will look for us all over the map to settle the score. At that time, he will interfere with our robbery. Also, Xia Hai and the others didn't make any big mistakes for me. I'm not a bloodthirsty person. Why should I kill them now?" Xia Xiaochan rolled her eyes. "Then don't let the Godbane Heaven people go." Han Fei immediately slapped his thigh and said, "That's impossible. If the Godbane Heaven dares to come, I dare to wipe them all out." One day later, Han Fei happened to leave the Golden Crow Heavenly King's route. Song Kaiyuan said, "Within 30 million kilometers of the Martial Emperor's city, there is no such thing as a route. This is the free war zone. Here, Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators are not allowed to attack. In other words, Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators can only attack Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators." Han Fei said, "I'm not a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator, am I?" Song Kaiyuan was silent for a moment and said, "Well, I don't know if I can be counted as a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator, but I don't think so." Han Fei sneered. "Anyway, I won't do anything. Try to let you do the looting later. Here are your spoils of war, a total of 500,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones and 38 ultra-quality divine weapons. The total value of all kinds of resources is estimated to be 300,000. Mushui Sisi exclaimed, "Ah, so much?" Han Fei said, "The crew members of the Avenger deserve a little more. From today on, for every ship we loot you could divide 20% of the resources. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Only 20% of the resources? Didn't this mean that Han Fei had obtained 5 million ultra-quality spiritual stones from this looting? Han Fei sighed in his heart. These children of the big clans are really rich. A random loot can get them millions of resources. If I loot 3 ships a day, I'll be rich in 3 to 5 days. Han Fei tried it with the 9-palace ruler of fortune and found that it was an auspicious hexagram. Satisfied, he began to choose with the nautical panorama. At this moment, Han Fei calculated in his heart and read silently. Except for the 4 glass palaces, the Snow God clan, and the myriad poison palace, all the immortal palaces, including the 100 demons, the mermaids, and the top 10 pirate groups, are included. Where's the closest and richest family? The reason why he excluded the myriad poison palace was that Han Fei felt that the myriad poison ancestor might have discovered his identity. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he'd better forget it. Han Fei didn't know which ship he would loot. In any case, with the nautical panorama to guide the way, they could only blame it on their bad luck. The Avenger, at this moment, opened its hunting claws and teeth like a dormant beast and began to attack everywhere. The big ship could travel 5 or 600,000 kilometers through the void with a single teleportation. The periphery of the Martial Emperor City was a free battle zone. Here, the ship's direction would not be affected, so when Han Fei obtained the nautical panorama, he was destined to become a hunter. On the ship of the Medicine King Heaven, a group of as many as 32 people came by ship. All 32 of them were half-monarch realm experts. From the name of the Medicine King Heaven, one must not think that it was a place to train alchemists. In fact, it was precisely because there were many alchemists in the Medicine King Heaven, so there were more and more powerhouses. Apart from alchemy, the people of the Medicine King Heaven also dabbled in a variety of things. They would not specialize in a single combat skill or technique. At this moment, on the bow deck, everyone in the Medicine King Heaven knew that they were about to arrive at the Martial Emperor City. For people like them, such opportunities were few and far between. A place like the Martial Emperor City was usually not a place they would come to. This time, they had the opportunity to participate in the Martial Emperor's inheritance, and they had been carefully selected. At this moment, everyone in the Medicine King Heaven was looking forward to it. At the bow, a woman said, "Mu-chun, this is a rare opportunity to come to the Martial Emperor City. It is said that anything can be traded here. We have to change the ingredients for our 5th grade tribulation pills." The young man nodded. It's time to let them see the strength of the Medicine King Heaven. All of a sudden, a giant black ship appeared out of thin air. Most people were still wondering who it was and why it suddenly appeared. However, when someone saw the pirate skull flag, they immediately cried out in surprise. "Pirates, it's the Avenger." Someone thought, "Not good. This is the free battle zone. How dare they rob here? Do they have the backing of a king?" On the big ship of the Medicine King Heaven, a middle-aged man stood proudly in the void. "The Avenger? Robbing in front of me? Aren't they a bit too arrogant?" Han Fei laughed. "The Medicine King Heaven, is it? Hand over 5 million ultra-quality spirit stones and 3 third-grade tribulation pills, and you can pass." Han Fei's asking price was twice that of robbing the Golden Crow Heaven. However, there was a king here, so it was normal to ask for more. The king of the Medicine King Heaven sneered. "I'm afraid you haven't woken up yet. A mere half-king dares to speak so arrogantly to me? Your subordinates are only 7.5 kings, and you want to rob the Medicine King Heaven? Where did you get the courage?" If you don't want to hand over, then let's fight. Cut the crap." In the free battle zone, although Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators were not allowed to attack at will, there was an exception. If you wanted to rob someone, then Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators could attack unconditionally. After all, if you want to rob me, I can't just watch as my people are robbed, right? Han Fei slashed at the big ship of the Medicine King Heaven with his twin sabers. Not at all reasonable and brainless. Han Fei thought to himself, "Since I'm here, how can I go back empty-handed?" Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1826. The yin-yang reincarnation knife slashed at the Medicine King's ship. This was an attack equivalent to a pioneer sea cultivator. Even if the ship could withstand it once or twice, how could it withstand 5, 6, 7, or 8 attacks? The king of the Medicine King's heart trembled when he saw that Han Fei could unleash such terrifying power. The strength of the leader of the Avengers was indeed terrifying. He was only a half-king. Below, there was a series of bangs as Li Kaiqian fired his cannons. Xia Xiaochan didn't want to use the celestial cicada transformation at this moment. Anything could happen in the free battle zone of Martial Emperor City. The celestial cicada transformation was her final trump card, so she naturally wouldn't use it unless necessary. Above, Han Fei turned into a golden giant, his fists forming the sacrificing punch and soul explosion divine stab. The king of the Medicine King's great Dao was fire control. Although it was a purple extraordinary fire, when the extraordinary fire poured over Han Fei, he found that Han Fei was completely fearless. The super huge force of nearly 100,000 waves alone was more than 10,000 kilometers. Han Fei and the king of the Medicine King's celestial flew into the void. However, just as the two of them entered the void, they heard two buzzing sounds. The king of the Medicine King's celestial and Han Fei had both projected clones. These two clones both had the strength of a half-king. The king of the Medicine King's celestial was surprised. You can also project clones? Han Fei grinned. I knew that you pioneer sea cultivators weren't that reliable. You wanted to secretly project a clone. Unfortunately, you ran into me. This place is forbidden. With Han Fei's shout, the sky full of flames suddenly extinguished. Han Fei took the opportunity to use the heaven-knocking gate with his rod. However, this heaven-knocking gate was not aimed at the king's projection, but at the Medicine King's ship formation. On the Medicine King's ship, Mu Chan shouted, "Everyone prepare for battle." They couldn't help but be nervous. Han Fei's combat power was comparable to a pioneer sea cultivator, so they had to fight the rest of the battle themselves. Although there was no reason for them to lose against 7 people, this was outside Martial Emperor City. However, they were outside of Martial Emperor City, so they might not only encounter the Avengers. Perhaps the other side had accomplices. Suddenly, Han Fei's knife flashed with a dazzling white light. As soon as the saber appeared, a large hole was torn in the ship formation. The girl beside Mu Chan said with a grave expression, "This strange saber light has already appeared 3 times. No one noticed it at all. The ship's energy consumption is extremely fast. Why don't we fight a quick battle and take them down first?" Right at this moment, the two of them saw a tyrannical piercing attack above the formation of ships. Mu Chen's face fell. He grabbed the woman beside him and retreated. Crack, bang. A large hole appeared in the formation of ships. Someone exclaimed in shock, Is this person even half a king? You actually have the time to be distracted while fighting the old ancestor?" Someone shouted, "Quick, replenish your energy. As long as we can't take them down in 100 breaths, they will retreat." However, at this moment, a scream came from the helm of the ship, from the eye of the formation that was controlling the ship. Here, the entire place exploded. There were thousands of light threads, which were clearly the slash marks left by the saber. Soon after, the Medicine King Dome ship formation was broken, and there was nothing left to hide. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Mu Chen shouted, "Oh no, someone has snuck in." On the other side, a dazzling sword aura swept across the sky. An abnormally tall and burly man from the Medicine King's sky pressed his armor box on the deck. Armor Dao combo. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, a total of 36 identical shields were placed at the bow of the ship. Clang, crack, crack, crack. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they heard this. Every time a layer of armor was broken, everyone was shocked. Someone exclaimed, "How is this possible?" 15 layers of Qiu Yi's consecutive cross were broken in a row. The opponent's attack has probably reached the level of a king's attack. The cracking sound rang out 23 times in a row. Just when everyone thought that the attack was over, another dazzling white light bloomed. Someone exclaimed, "Where did this saber light come from?" Why is it erupting again in less than a breath's time? Crack, crack, crack. The last dozen or so barriers of the armored Dao consecutive cross were shattered in one blow. Li Kaitian roar, kill. Glass merciful hand. Sky falling bow. Dragons and snakes. On the Avenger, the 6 people attacked with all their strength. Those who could be sent to the ship by the 4 immortal palace masters were all the top super experts of their respective palaces. The combat power that the 6 of them burst out in an instant was incomparable to that of ordinary demi-kings. They found that none of them were a match for them. And Xia Xiaochan, who had already slipped onto the ship, held 2 daggers in her hands. When she reappeared, she had already killed the 6th person. In the sky, the Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom was shocked to see this scene. Are all the heavenly talents on the Avenger of this level? Any one of them is comparable to the strongest heavenly talent of the Medicine Kingdom. Isn't this a bit too shocking? After a moment, Li Kaitian shouted, "Hand over the Sun-Moon shell, or don't blame me for being cruel." Then Li Kaitian looked at Jianhui. "I've got 3. Jianhui replied indifferently, 5. Li Kan, the Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom saw that the situation was hopeless and thought that with him watching over them, nothing would happen. Unexpectedly, he couldn't escape in the end. You gone too far. Avenger, Han Fei, you've pushed me too far." Up in the sky, the Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom swallowed a spiritual pill. Han Fei glanced at the pill and saw that there seemed to be 5 tribulation patterns on it. Roar! Suddenly, Han Fei felt that the strength of the guy opposite him had skyrocketed. That oppressive might actually somewhat forced him to do so. The old turtle said, "Alchemists will always refine some medicinal pills that increase one's strength by sacrificing one's vitality. Look at this guy. His strength has probably skyrocketed by 50%. Let's not fight." In fact, the moment the person swallowed the pill, the void behind Han Fei exploded. Han Fei shouted at the Avenger, "All crew, evacuate." The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom said, "Don't you think it's too late to leave now?" This person's strength had skyrocketed, so had his ego. In an instant, he chased after Han Fei, intending to kill him. However, Han Fei clenched his fist. The fist was followed by thousands of swords. Humph! How can this little trick save your life? With a bang, Han Fei was blasted 100 miles away. However, the tens of thousands of small swords suddenly exploded, and a thick gray mist almost enveloped the Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom. Ew! The Patriarch immediately felt sick. F***CK. I've never smelled such a stench in my life. It was so stinky that his scalp went numb. It was even worse than a great poison. Just as Han Fei was about to attack again, he suddenly sensed that 3 large ships had appeared. There were more than 100 people on the 3 ships, and their symbol was a blood-red scythe. Immediately, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. The Azura Pirates? The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom, who had just broken free from the stench, clearly also sensed the Azura Pirates. At that time, his heart had turned cold. The Avenger Pirates, not even one of the top 10 pirate groups, were already so difficult to deal with. What would the Azura pirate crew look like if that happened? However, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Hey, damn it, the Avenger Pirates don't kill people. However, the Azura pirate group practically left no survivors wherever they went. Why don't we work together? The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom wanted to slap Han Fei to death. You've already done this much, and you still want to work together? The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom shouted coldly. Do you think I'll believe you? Han Fei sneered and said, Do you want to see the heaven of medicine kings being slaughtered? I don't believe you haven't heard of Pei Qianying. Look at the Avenger Pirates. Did they really slaughter the Medicine Kingdom alone? Han Fei wasn't afraid that the Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom wouldn't agree. He continued, As long as you give me 2 of those 5th-grade pills, I can help you once. The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom's expression changed drastically. 5th grade Dao pattern pills? You really want them? Han Fei shrugged. Compared to your entire ship of heavenly talents, 2 5th grade Dao pattern pills is a bargain. The Patriarch of the Medicine Kingdom didn't think too much, because he could see the Azura pirates' fleet moving through the void. He threw a bottle of pills over. "I'll give you another one after you win." Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. This robbery was worth it. Han Fei had seen the effects of the pills just now. Increasing his strength by 50%, the Medicine King Dome's old man's strength skyrocketed. Immediately, Han Fei said telepathically, "Everyone, don't just stand there. Cooperate with the Medicine King Dome and fight the Azura pirates together." On the Medicine King Dome side, the Patriarch of the Medicine King Dome also said telepathically, "Everyone, return to your positions. The Azura pirates are here. Get ready to fight. Temporarily cooperate with the Avenger." Huh? Below, both Han Fei's side and the Medicine King Dome side were dumbfounded. Just now, they were fighting to the death. On his side, half of his people had already been robbed, and now they were working together? At that moment, 3 huge ships appeared in the void. The appearance of the blood-colored scythe flag made many experts of the Medicine King Dome cheer. It's the Azura pirates. So many people. Get ready to fight. Remember, don't hold back. These Azura pirates kill without batting an eye. Don't hold back. On the leading ship, a man dressed in a black and red robe held a sickle in one hand. He laughed coldly and said, "What a great Avengers pirate group. You dare to steal the prey that my Shura pirate group has set its eyes on? How dare they?" Third watch. Vote Smita. End of this chapter. Chapter 1827. The 3 ships of the Azura pirates circled around. Pei Qianying, the captain of the Azura pirates, had already seen the battle between Han Fei and the Patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven. Unfortunately, he was one step too late. He saw Han Fei being knocked back 100 kilometers by the Patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven. Therefore, he thought that this kid's physique was extraordinary and that he could block a blow from a king. However, Pei Qianying was no fool. Since the Avengers dared to rob the ships of the Medicine King Heaven, they must have some tricks up their sleeves. Therefore, before the battle began, he said, "Han Fei of the Avengers, right?" Han Fei pretended to be serious. "Pei Qianying?" Pei Qianying didn't care that Han Fei called him by his name. "You know that the Medicine King Heaven is the prey of the Azura pirates?" Han Fei shrugged. "What do you think?" Pei Qianying sneered. Kid, you're quite arrogant, aren't you? Never mind. As long as you contribute all the resources you plundered to the Azura pirates, I will let you go. After all, I prefer pirates." Han Fei sneered. "And if I don't?" Pei Qianying sneered. "Don't? Just based on the few people from the Avengers? What a joke. Ha ha ha." Following Pei Qianying's laughter, everyone on the 3 ships of the Azura pirates began to laugh. Below, Song Kaiyuan and the others looked solemn. They couldn't laugh. This was one of the top 10 pirate groups. The Azura pirates were the most ruthless. They left no survivors when they plundered. Their captain, Pei Qianying, was even more ruthless. It could be said that among the top 10 pirate groups, they were the most ruthless. Han Fei said leisurely, "So what if we have fewer people? My Avengers can take on 10 of them. Are you convinced?" With that, Han Fei hurriedly looked at the Patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven. "Pei Qianying is yours." The Patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven had no choice but to trust Han Fei. After all, the Avengers didn't kill anyone from the Medicine King Heaven during the raid. It was exactly because of this that he chose to cooperate with Han Fei. The people he had brought with him were all prodigies of the Medicine King Dome. If he died here, it would be a great loss to the Medicine King Dome. The Medicine King Patriarch nodded, and Han Fei snickered. "Pei Qianying, right? You dare to laugh at me? I don't even know who you are." After that, Han Fei's voice was like a dragon's roar, like thunder falling on the sea. "Kill. Leave no one alive." Pei Qianying was stunned. He couldn't help but laugh. "So, the Avengers are a bunch of brainless pirates. Kill." Pei Qianying didn't take Han Fei seriously. Since Han Fei refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, he might as well kill them. Buzz, Han Fei took the lead. The yin-yang reincarnation knife was the first to slash at a big boat, and Han Fei said, "Girl, you and Song Kaiyuan attacked the same boat." Song Kaiyuan immediately sent a voice transmission. "Be careful. The Azura pirates' fleet cannot be destroyed easily. There's Azura blood poison on their boat. If you're stained by the filthy blood, it may infiltrate your bloodline and cause a great damage. Han Fei's heart thumped. Don't worry, just kill them. Han Fei sneered inwardly. The last thing he feared was filth and evil. With the purification power of the heaven-awakening divine art, how could he be stained by mere filth? Fuse! Xia Xiaochan fused with the giant arowana, and her combat power increased. The moment the yin-yang reincarnation knife slashed out, she also attacked. Han Fei, on the other hand, punched at another big ship. The Azura pirate team's ship formation turned into a bloody mist. The blood mist seemed to be corroding the surroundings. Heaven-awakening divine art, buzz, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 white beams of light descended from the sky. 3 large holes appeared in the strange formation of ships. Hiss, Pei Qianying, and the patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven were waiting to see a joke. Who knew this would happen? The ship formation that he had always been proud of couldn't even withstand one attack from Han Fei. Is this divine art heaven awakening? The patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven secretly exclaimed. If he was right, this couldn't be the heaven awakening divine art, could it? Song Kaiyuan and Muxue Sisi were even more shocked. Even Song Kaiyuan was shocked. Is this the human king technique? According to the legend, such a technique wasn't something that ordinary people could master. In the Age of Doom, there was only one human king who could master the heaven-awakening divine art. But today they saw it. At this moment, Song Kaiyuan suddenly knew why the 4 immortal palaces asked them to be Han Fei's thugs. It seemed that they just wanted to get close to Han Fei, because Han Fei was very likely to have the inheritance of a human king. The 3 ships of the Azura pirates were broken at the same time. The crew members on the ships were also dumbfounded. They never thought that something like this would happen. The Crimson ship formation couldn't even hold out for half a second. Whoosh, Xia Xiaochan had already rushed onto the ship. One of the shadows was entangled, and his divine soul was instantly shattered by a soul stab. Han Fei wasn't worried about Xia Xiaochan and the others at all. In terms of strength, these people were definitely at the top of the half-king realm in the chaotic sea. The Azura pirates couldn't compare to them at all. As for Han Fei himself, he attacked even faster. Han Fei drew out his blade, and the great Tao of gravity instantly surged. How could Han Fei let these people fight back when he was at the king realm? Puff, puff, puff. 5 half-king realm cultivators couldn't put up any resistance in front of Han Fei. Their divine souls were controlled, and they died immediately. Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the blade purgatory was formed again. The area within 1,000 miles turned into a tide of swords. Even so, Han Fei didn't stop. Compared to the other pirate groups, Han Fei didn't have a good impression of the Azura pirates. Pei Qianying was just looking for the thrill of slaughter. But Pei Qianying wasn't a good person. Was Han Fei a good person? When it came to fighting, Han Fei had never been afraid. When it came to slaughtering, could Pei Qianying compare to Xue Fan? Xue Fan had sacrificed the entire Blood-Sea Divinewood city. If he really became a king, Pei Qianying would have to kneel down and call him daddy. Han Fei's hand gripped the void. Every time he slashed out, someone would be cut in half. Their divine soul had no time to escape and was destroyed by Han Fei's finger. In a single exchange, 9 experts had died at Han Fei's hands. On the other ship, Xia Xiaochan and the others had already killed more than half of the King Realm experts. Of course, those who had been killed were basically not very strong. Han Fei had already shouted, "Leave the ship and expand the battlefield." As for the Medicine King Heaven's side, their combat strength was a little worrying. Only a guy named Mu Chun and a woman had killed 2 half-King Realm experts, while Han Fei's side had killed 6 people. At this moment, the strength of the battle was revealed. Although the experts of the Medicine King Heaven had learned many things, their strength was limited. In other words, they were actually very strong, but they lacked combat experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lost 6 people in the first round of attacks. However, Pei Qianying's expression was extremely ugly. The only thing he hadn't expected was that Han Fei would be able to break through a ship formation so easily. If he hadn't been able to break through the ship formation, the battle would have gone in the other direction. Seeing that Han Fei's Avengers were so strong, Pei Qianying's body emitted a strong blood aura, and a figure appeared in the void. It was a figure formed by black and red mutant blood. Upon closer look, it was another Pei Qianying, and he also had the strength of the Pioneer Sea Realm. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. An avatar? Han Fei laughed. With a thought, the surrounding spiritual energy was instantly sucked dry, and an invincible battle intent condensed, turning into a giant. With a point of his finger, a peak venerable expert was killed on the spot. From afar, he watched as the bloody man slashed down with his scythe that traversed the heavens. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Tianqi, when a pillar of holy light descended, Han Fei grabbed a 1,000-meter-long giant blade of holy light from the pillar of light. Swish, white light and blood-red light met in the sky. In the perception of countless people, they saw that the blood-red scythe was cut in half by Han Fei's slash. This was the bane of the heavenly saints. Even if the bloody figure was in the Pioneer Sea Realm, so what? The Tianqi Great Path was the least afraid of this. Han Fei stepped 1,000 miles in one step, stepped into the void, and grabbed a mass of holy light in his hand. He waved his hand, and billions of blade auras pierced through the void and swept at the bloody figure. The bloody figure's blood aura exploded, but the terrifying explosion didn't hurt Han Fei at all. Instead, some people were infected by the blood mist and stained with dirty blood. But Han Fei slapped the bloody figure away. Pei Qianying, right? Then, Han Fei's whole body was filled with holy light, and he slapped the figure's head to the side. You're crazy, aren't you? You think you're something, don't you? You want me to give you resources? Han Fei's peak speed was definitely not enough, especially after he had experienced the Tao of Wind. Under the suppression of his attributes, he punched and kicked the bloody figure. I made you ugly. I made you a pirate. I made you an insult to the profession of pirates. BM, Pei Qianying's avatar was completely suppressed. The dirty blood was useless, and his real body was being held back by the Medicine King Patriarch. He wasn't afraid at first, but the Medicine King Patriarch seemed to be on drugs and wouldn't let him go. Seeing that his avatar would be slaughtered if this went on, Pei Qianying's expression changed. He yelled, "Back off!" Chapter 1828. Pei Qianying was originally very confident. He thought that any random ship formation of his wouldn't be something that the Avengers could break. In the end, in an instant, their ship formation was completely destroyed. Then, Han Fei went on a killing spree, showing the strength of the Pioneer Sea State. In particular, Han Fei's Great Path made Pei Qianying's heart sink. This Tao was suppressing his own Great Tao. The great Taos countered each other. How could they fight this battle? At this point, Pei Qianying was also frightened. At this time, he couldn't help but wonder why the bounty of the Avengers was so high. 2C quelling bizarre treasures. So, this guy actually had the Tianqi Great Path? That was the Tao of the Human King. At this moment, Pei Qianying wanted to run. But how could Han Fei let him do that? Han Fei roared. Didn't you talk to me like that just now? Why are you leaving now? If you don't want to die, leave the sun-moon shells behind. However, as a famous pirate, he still had some confidence after all. Pei Qianying was determined to leave, so he quickly came to the Blood Shadow clone. Immediately, the Blood Shadow merged into his body, and Pei Qianying's strength increased greatly. The filthy blood in the air turned into clones holding scythes, intending to intercept and kill the other crew members of the Avengers. And Han Fei didn't panic at all. Even if I'm not a king, I'm not necessarily weaker than you. When Han Fei divided 3 projections of the half-king realm in a row, Pei Qianying was really speechless. Is this guy really only a half-king realm cultivator? Can a half-king create a half-king projection? Are you King kidding me? In the chaotic battle below, Han Fei's side killed a total of 23 people and grabbed 18 sea swallowing seashells. At this time, Han Fei knew it was almost time. If they really fought like this, he would be exposed, and then he wouldn't be able to beat them. Without the forceful obstruction of the Avengers, the Azura pirates ran very fast. After the Azura pirates ran far away, the big ship of the Medicine King Heaven was also ready to teleport. At this time, Han Fei said, "Where's the last pill?" Instantly, the patriarch of the Medicine King Heaven threw a pill to Han Fei with an ugly expression. In the next moment, he directed the ship to move through the void. Han Fei shrugged slightly. At this point, he didn't want to fight anymore. Most importantly, if he continued to fight, he would be exposed. Originally, he only wanted to completely destroy the Herb King Dome. But who would have thought that the Azura pirate group would come? It was a pity that he wasn't able to kill either of them. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, Han Fei said, "This place is too noisy. Let's get out of here quickly. Let's run 5 million kilometers first. As for where we go, it's up to you." After a while, there were exactly 35 sun-moon shells in front of him. Han Fei looked at them one by one and couldn't have felt better. He cursed. Not even one sea-quelling bizarre treasure? So poor. At that time, Song Kaiyuan and the others did not feel good. Song Kaiyuan thought to himself, "I've seen a few sun-moon shells. There are countless spirit stones and various elixirs inside. Why did Han Fei say that he was really poor?" Han Fei rummaged and finally threw out a few sun-moon shells. "Fine, I'll give you one. 5 million for your hard work. I'm tired today. Let's take a rest." Everyone, Song Kaiyuan and Mui Shui Sisi, looked at each other and calculated in their minds. On this trip, Han Fei had looted at least 5 million ultra-quality spiritual stones worth of resources. The two of them were speechless. How could he think that Han Fei was poor? Of course, Han Fei actually didn't suffer a loss this time. After all, not only did he get 2 5th-grade tribulation pills, but he also found a 3rd-grade tribulation pill in a sun-moon shell. Relatively speaking, in the Herb King Dome, pills were more valuable than spiritual stones. He had robbed 2 kings, but he had only managed to get a few pills. That was because he was too weak and he had not been able to hunt down a king. Otherwise, how could a king be worth so little? If he could also expand his sea, he would definitely be able to wipe out both the Medicine King Dome and the Azura pirates like he was today. Then he had to do it all at once. In the sea-quelling painting, Han Fei looked at the 5th-grade pill, and information appeared in his eyes. Name 5th-grade tribulation pill introduction, an ultra-quality pill refined by an alchemist to stimulate potential. This pill contains great energy and the power of the Tao. After taking it, the body's potential will be stimulated, and the user's strength will soar according to the user's talent. Level C expansion, quality, ultra quality, contains chaotic energy greater than 88 strands. Remarks, there is a certain chance that taking this pill will damage the foundation and leave impurities in the body. Seeing this description, Han Fei's eyes lit up. This thing was good stuff. Not only was there a large amount of chaotic energy, but it could also enhance different strength for different people. As for the impurities, it didn't affect him at all. He had been cultivating the pure mystic body. If there was impurities, he could just expel them out. How could he not know his own physique? He checked the other tribulation pill, which was exactly the same. Han Fei couldn't help but curl his lips. It would be good if he could get a 3rd-grade tribulation pill that could block the heavenly tribulation. The remaining 3rd-grade tribulation pill in front of Han Fei had roughly the same effect as the one he had obtained before. In addition to these precious pills, Han Fei calculated that he now had as many as 7 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. This number had already exceeded the total resources of the Hexagon Starfish sect. Xia Xiaochan said, Hey, you're smiling." Han Fei immediately came back to himself. "Who? Did I?" Xia Xiaochan said grumpily, "It's just a few pills. Do you have to be so happy?" Han Fei immediately gave the 5th-grade tribulation pill in his hand to Xia Xiaochan and said, "One pill can make you exert several times your strength. If you use the heavenly cicada transformation in this pill, you may be able to reach the combat power of the sea expansion realm in a short time. There are exactly 2 of them, one for each of us. This trip is worth it." Xia Xiaochan said in surprise, "Is the effect of this pill really so strong?" Han Fei said, "Aren't you well read?" The Medicine King Heaven has such a name, which means that it is indeed unparalleled in the chaotic ocean and alchemy. In this regard, it's trustworthy. Xia Xiaochan took the pill and couldn't help but think. Once the mermaid pearl of the mermaid clan is condensed, its strength will be doubled. Unfortunately, my mermaid pearl is still a little short. I guess I may be able to condense it after reaching the half-king realm. Oh, Han Fei thought to himself. With Xia Xiaochan's current strength, if she continues to cultivate the pure mystic body, when a mermaid pearl is condensed, wouldn't her strength be comparable to my current strength? It seems that I still underestimated the mermaid clan. If the mermaid clan's combat power in the half-king realm was so strong, Xia Xiaochan's bloodline level might be a little bit stronger than his current strength. While Han Fei and the others were resting, the Martial Emperor's city exploded. The news that the Azura pirates were being suppressed by the Avengers at sea was released by the Medicine King Heaven. Although the Azura pirates and the Avengers were not good people in the eyes of the Medicine King Heaven. However, at least the Avengers didn't kill people. This time, the 8 people who died were all thanks to the Azura pirates. Therefore, how could they not do something that could damage the reputation of the Azura pirates at this moment? When this news exploded all over the Martial Emperor's city, many strong masters were also talking about it. In a blacksmith shop, someone said, "Why don't we try it?" Recently, there are a lot of people coming to the Martial Emperor's city. The blacksmith shook his head. You have to be alive to snatch it. They are all fierce dragons crossing the river. Those who have no strength have joined forces to come here. Those who have some strength can't be snatched by just anyone. The proprietress of a restaurant, dressed in a short velvet skirt, stood at the window and said in a sweet voice, "It seems that the competition between the top 10 pirate groups is about to begin. I'm really looking forward to this hunt." Beside the proprietress, someone was puzzled. In my opinion, those kings should just stuff people into the Origin Sea. Then, just bring them over together. The proprietress sneered. If it were you, would you be willing to expose your Origin Sea? The Origin Sea is the foundation of the cultivation of the Pioneer Sea realm. How can those guys be willing to do that? Besides, if it's not difficult to come over, wouldn't it make people look down on this Martial Emperor's city? In a certain arena, a man in white had a relaxed expression as he watched the life-and-death battle between high-level venerables. When he suddenly heard the news, he could not help but exclaim in surprise. That person said, "That's really interesting. A random pirate group actually defeated the Azura pirate group and even robbed the Medicine King Sky's ship. Really interesting. You said that Han Fei has not yet reached the Pioneer Sea realm?" "Yes, without a doubt." That person nodded slightly. "That's even more interesting. A half-king can match a Pioneer Sea realm, and Pioneer Sea realm cultivators are not allowed to take the initiative to attack those below the Pioneer Sea realm. Doesn't that mean that this person is invincible in the free war zone?" "Exactly. The Peace Pirate Group has always believed in peace. What do you think? Let's not compete in this game for now." There were all kinds of monsters in the Martial Emperor's city. There were still 9 days before the invincible inheritance. At this time, more and more people were waiting to watch the show. In the free war zone, there were also many people preparing to forcefully break through and enter the Martial Emperor's city. After all, it was not very easy to rob and kill a ship across the sea for 30 million miles. Some people watched quietly, while others prepared to hunt. After all, for veteran pirates, if they did not seek some excitement, there would not be such a grand occasion in the future. The Martial Emperor's city did not open the Martial Emperor's inheritance every day. Chapter 1829. Outside the Martial Emperor's city. In the free war zone spanning 30 million miles, battles were unfolding in every corner. Among the major pirate groups, in addition to Han Fei, who plundered the Medicine King Heaven, the other major pirate groups also took action. They were far away from Han Fei, so Han Fei didn't encounter them. Han Fei picked up the navigator and searched for the force that was the least dangerous and most suitable for plundering. As a result, Han Fei and the others, who were preparing to plunder, found that the other party was actually the Red Fire Pirates, which ranked 9th. Han Fei was speechless. He thought he would encounter other forces heading to the Martial Emperor's city. However, The navigator pointed to the red fire pirates. So, this scarlet fire pirates is actually the most suitable for me to rob? However, they were also pirates. Originally, they came out to plunder. How many resources could they bring? Except for the resources of Shui Ran, the leader of the Red Fire Pirates, there was nothing to plunder in the entire Red Fire Pirates. When the Avenger suddenly appeared on the Red Fire Pirates route, the people of the Red Fire Pirates were all shocked. Who the hell is this? Who the hell is running into our cannon? However, the two sides looked at each other, and their faces were all dark. Song Kaiyuan said, "The fire god of the Red Fire Pirates. The one on the fire god is probably Shui Ran. It is said that he is known as the second fire of the chaotic ocean. He has an alien flame and is the god of fire." Han Fei's face was ugly. Why did we encounter such a thing? The Red Fire Pirates had two large ships. On the ship, there seemed to be 40 or 50 people, plus a pioneer sea realm powerhouse. This force couldn't be underestimated. On the opposite side, Shui Ran also looked at Han Fei in surprise and said helplessly, "The Avenger Pirates? Are they stupid? Robbing our Scarlet Fire Pirates?" Behind Shui Ran, a half-king said, "Captain, this Avenger is not a friendly person. It is said that Han Fei fought Li Ji of the Medicine King Heaven and Pei Qianying of the Azura Pirates yesterday, without losing. He has a total of 7 subordinates on his ship, all heavenly talents. The 3 ships of the Azura Pirates didn't hurt him at all." "Humph," Shui Ran snorted coldly. "Do I need you to tell me about this?" After the two sides confirmed each other's identities, Shui Ran of the Red Fire Pirates asked Han Fei telepathically, "Han Fei?" Han Fei stood proudly at the bow. "Shui Ran?" Shui Ran asked, "The Avengers? What does that mean?" Han Fei smiled. "I got the wrong person. Do you believe me?" Shui Ran, "If that's the case, shall we part ways?" "Don't worry. Since we've already met, why don't we have a battle first?" Shui Ran's face turned cold. "Han Fei, are you provoking me?" Han Fei shrugged and said, "I'm just asking for a fight. Do pirates have to plunder resources?" With that said, Han Fei looked at Song Kaiyuan and the others. "Your trial time is up again. Kill them." Not to mention Song Kaiyuan and the others. Even Shui Ran was speechless. Who the hell was this person? Falling out with him just like that? Could it be that this was another peaceful pirate group? The peaceful pirate group was determined to wipe out all pirate groups, so they didn't have a good relationship with anyone. However, the peaceful pirate group was extremely strong, and ordinary pirates would avoid them. Historically, whenever the top 10 pirate groups changed their rankings, one of them would usually be wiped out by the peaceful pirate group. It had been like this for many years. Therefore, many pirate groups were hesitant at the mention of the word peaceful. Shui Ran looked over coldly. At this moment, except for Han Fei, there were only 7 of them. How could they fight against 50 people on his side? To be honest, although Shui Ran knew that the crew of the Avengers were very strong, wasn't this too exaggerated? He wasn't afraid at all. Swish, swish, when Han Fei and Shui Ran broke through the void, the battle below also became white-hot. After more than 10 minutes, the Red Fire Pirates left behind the corpses of 5 venerables. Then, led by Shui Ran, they ran away. Shui Ran was shocked. Han Fei is so strong. Is he still a half-king? Even if he used some kind of secret method, Han Fei's combat power was too shocking. However, the key problem was that Han Fei was not a king and was not restricted by the rules of the Martial Emperor's city. Fortunately, he ran away quickly. Otherwise, if he continued to fight like this, Shui Ran felt that the Red Fire Pirates, who were about to be ranked at the bottom, would probably suffer a great disaster. Shui Ran escaped. Little did he know that everyone on the Avengers, including Han Fei, was not relaxed. Han Fei's battle was not for resources, but for fighting. With the pressure of the battle, he consolidated his strength. After all, in the 2 months outside the Grand Mystery Heaven, he had improved too much. And Song Kaiyuan and the others, although they had experienced a lot of battles, were not rich. Everyone enjoyed the battle to their heart's content. In fact, in addition to sharpening himself, another thing Han Fei wanted to do was to make a name for himself. After all, so far, The Avengers had fought with the Raiders, Fierce Gale, Azura, Red Fire, and many other pirate groups, and had never lost. And now, near the Martial Emperor's city, there were so many strong masters, and the news was so smooth, it was hard for the Avengers not to become famous. However, Han Fei felt that this was not enough. On that day, the Avengers robbed the ship of the Dreamweaver Sky. However, there were too many soul tactics in the Dreamweaver Sky, and Han Fei and the others didn't gain much advantage. Fortunately, they escaped unscathed. The next day, the Avengers attacked the seabed humans. As a result, they were intercepted by two kings. Fortunately, Han Fei reacted quickly and ran away. On the same day, Han Fei returned with the Gemini divine technique. Besides, he killed a half-king in front of the two kings of the seabed human race, which was full of provocation. Another day, Han Fei robbed the refining god Heaven. The next day, Han Fei robbed the Berserk Corpse Sky. For 7 days in a row, Han Fei and the others didn't gain much, but they provoked everywhere. After fighting this, they fought that one. It could be said that the Avengers were now really famous. In the Martial Emperor City, a gambling house opened a bet. Today's bet, get ready to start. The first bet, whether the Avengers will attack the Wuji Heaven or not. The second bet, the Misfortune Pirates take the initiative to attack and claim to hunt the Avengers. The success rate. The third bet, the gambling house opened bets according to different situations. There was no cheating involved in this kind of prediction. It was all based on guessing. Someone laughed and scolded. If the Avengers dare to attack the Wuji Heaven, they will be courting death. If the Grand Pure Palace and the Wuji Heaven Palace were so easy to rob, they wouldn't have a chance. But in this casino, someone shouted, F***CK, I'm optimistic about the Avengers. Isn't it just going to attack the Wuji Heaven? I bet 1 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Bet. Hiss, someone took a breath and said, Brother, you are throwing resources into the water. How good would it be if you gave it to me? In the limitless skies, who would dare to rob a random king other than the immortal pirates? The person who bet said disdainfully, Who hasn't robbed the Avengers these days? The casino was in an uproar. After placing his bet, the man returned to his seat. Here, there were 4 other people sitting. As soon as the burly man sat down, he sighed. It's a pity that we can't bet too much. I estimate that we can only earn 500,000 yuan at most. Another person said, Why don't we go to the auction house later? Let's sell all the things we robbed. Otherwise, we have to pay for the money we owe the captain. Immediately afterward, a scholarly man said, These days, we have almost earned back 1 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Even though he had to fight more and earn less, it was still much faster than normal cultivation. Later, we will sell all the things we can. It was not easy to come to the Martial Emperor City. Even though there were many good things here, the Martial Emperor City was not easy to obtain. If we don't have money to buy them, it will be embarrassing. A woman said, Can I borrow them from the captain? The captain is worth at least 30 million. Everyone was speechless. Do you think you can borrow them? These 5 people all looked ordinary. They were Song Kaiyuan and the others in disguise. As for Han Fei, he had gone to hunt the Wuji Heavens, just as the casino had said. Even the smartest Song Kaiyuan didn't know how Han Fei could hunt the Wuji Heaven ship. The kings of the Wuji Heaven were not ordinary kings. Their strength was by no means comparable to Shui Ran or Pei Qianying. At this moment, a woman walked over, holding a fish skin map in her hand. Everyone looked at it and immediately asked, Lu Ran, how much did you sell it for? Lu Ran's face was still in a slightly stiff state. After pondering for a long time, she said leisurely, You can't imagine it. Everyone asked, How much? Lu Ran said, The information that the captain asked us to sell is worth this much. Lu Ran stretched out 2 fingers. Wow, 2 million ultra-quality spiritual stones? Lu Ran shook her head. It's 20 million. What? In an instant, the few of them fell into silence. They got off the ship in advance and came to the Martial Emperor City because the ship that Han Fei was going to rob today was beyond their ability. However, they didn't come down to play. They came with a mission. That was, to completely reveal Han Fei's identity according to Han Fei's instructions. At the same time, they would also reveal a fictitious ancient secret. Song Kaiyuan was also shocked at this moment. So much money is not worth that much just to reveal the captain's identity. Do you mean that the intelligence center of the Martial Emperor City believes the ancient secret? Lu Ran nodded. Most likely. At least, I have now received 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones for the information. They said that when the follow-up information is confirmed, I can go to get the remaining 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Son of AB asterisk, Li Kaitian couldn't help but curse. Captain, it's too easy to make money. Chapter 1830. In the Free War Zone. For ships from the Wuji Heaven appeared one after another. This time, the one overseeing the Wuji Heaven was none other than Bei Xianbing, who had led the group to the king perished. Maybe it was because they were overconfident, or for some other reason, but the Wuji Heaven's fleet didn't move very frequently. On one of the ships, a young man was cultivating on the deck. His body was shining with golden light, and terrifying intent descended from time to time. This person was Li Xinghen, a top genius of the Wuji Heaven who had awakened the path of invincibility. His strength was at the peak of the half-step monarch realm in the Wuji Heaven. Last time, Li Xinghen had thought he was just going to steal a few keys. Why would he need to do something so simple? Who would have thought that an expert on the path of invincibility would appear in the king perished? Therefore, Li Xinghen didn't want to miss the martial emperor's inheritance this time. Why were the Wuji Heaven's ships moving so slowly? It wasn't because they couldn't run fast, but because they wanted to wait and see if the top 10 pirate groups would come and rob them. This was the confidence of the immortal palaces. Among the immortal palaces, some monarchs brought their people directly, some sneaked in, and some quickly went to the martial emperor's city after entering the Free War Zone. Only a few dared to travel slowly in the Free War Zone. The Wuji Heaven was one of the bold immortal palaces. Xinghen, Bei Xianbing appeared behind Li Xinghen without him noticing. She said, Xinghen, it doesn't matter if we can meet the kid on the path of invincibility this time. I heard that there's a bronze door in the martial emperor's inheritance. Find a way to get in no matter what. Li Xinghen said, Uncle Master, what's so special about that bronze door? Bei Xianbing said, I don't know. I've seen that door once before, but I couldn't enter it. I've never heard of anyone doing so. The Black Impermanence kid entered the king perished a few months ago and came out safely, which means that it's at least safe. There must be a great opportunity in there. Li Xinghen nodded. Yes, Uncle Master. The martial emperor's inheritance only reopened after 1,300 years. Naturally, I won't let go of this opportunity. Bei Xianbing said, You're lucky. It's been 3,200 years since the last time, and you still managed to kill a demi-king. So, to be able to make this trip is already not bad. Li Xingchen, after that, Bei Xianbing ordered, Stay here for 2 hours. If no pirate groups arrive in 2 hours, then there is no need to wait. Just go straight to Martial Emperor City. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of kilometers ahead, a large ship was floating on the sea. A figure wielding a pair of sabers stood on the mast and looked over. Beneath his feet, a flag of skulls fluttered wantonly. Bei Xianbing sneered. Is this guy's brain damaged? Li Xingchen narrowed his eyes. It's the Avenger. Who would have thought that such a pirate group would come to stop my limitless sky? Martial Uncle, let me do it. Bei Xianbing sneered. Do I need to do anything to deal with such a small fry? Li Xingchen suddenly stood up. You can watch the battle, Martial Uncle. When the two sides were 20,000 kilometers away, everyone on the 4 big ships of the limitless sky saw the Avenger. At this moment, with a thought, the Avenger was taken in to forge the universe. Swish, he held his kitchen knife horizontally. This is a robbery. Pay up. To be honest, at this moment, on the big ships of the limitless sky, everyone looked at each other as if looking at a fool. Someone was speechless. Is this guy's brain okay? He single-handedly stopped the fleet of the limitless sky. Someone shook his head. Is this the so-called Avenger? He's obviously a fool. Even if there are no kings in the limitless sky, Li Xingchen is not someone he can deal with, right? Someone grinned. This kid is dead. He may not know what he is doing. When they were only 3,000 kilometers away, Li Xinghen raised his hand, and the ships of the limitless sky slowly stopped. Li Xinghen stepped in the air, wearing a gilded ancient robe, and there was a golden light on his forehead. His aura fluctuated, and the surroundings were full of sharp metal qi. Li Xinghen said, "Avenger, Han Fei?" Han Fei curled his lips. "Who are you? I don't know you. Give me money." Li Xingchen's expression didn't change. "How dare you single-handedly stop the ship of the limitless sky? You are very bold. I heard that your combat power is very strong. In that case, let's have a try." Han Fei shrugged. "You talk too much. In order to wait for you, I missed a meal. How can I give up without a few million yuan of compensation?" Li Xingchen's body was shining with golden light, and his invincible fighting intent was revealed. A pair of strange gloves appeared on his hands, as if there were hidden weapons on each finger. When the two stood facing each other, after a full minute, the two almost attacked at the same time. Swish, the two knives in Han Fei's hands slashed out a dazzling knife light, breaking through the void and crossing thousands of kilometers, going straight at Li Xinghen. Li Xinghen's eyes shone with golden light, and he just moved slightly in front of the ship, letting the knife light approach him. But it suddenly exploded. The rolling waves shook the hull back dozens of kilometers. Terrifying, huge waves rolled back in the sky. And after this blow, a layer of golden light barrier that protected the ship was completely shattered. The wind around Li Xinghen was no longer something that ordinary venerables could resist. After feeling Han Fei's blow, the corners of Li Xinghen's mouth curled up slightly. "Interesting. You almost reached the Pioneer Sea realm. Unfortunately, it's still not enough." And Han Fei was slightly surprised. Is this person also on the invincible realm? Although Han Fei hadn't used the power of the Great Path yet, this person was definitely not an ordinary person to be able to block his blow so easily. Han Fei immediately knew who this person was. He was the only person in the limitless sky who had embarked on the invincible realm, and could also be called the strongest powerhouse in the limitless sky. Suddenly, Li Xinghen raised his hand. At the moment when Li Xinghen raised his hand, Han Fei suddenly felt a trace of crisis. He appeared on the other side with a big dipper. However, at the moment when Han Fei appeared, a golden thread moved extremely fast and appeared in front of Han Fei almost in an instant. Han Fei didn't move, and the coiled turtle array suddenly appeared in front of him. Clink! Crack! Although the coiled turtle array only gave Han Fei a short time, it was enough for Han Fei to raise his hand and condense a knife. When this knife was launched, a swish resounded between heaven and earth. Han Fei just felt that there was a silk thread that broke through the void and appeared in front of him in an instant. Han Fei curled his lips. Infinite phantom silk? It looks quite ordinary. Song Kaiyuan said that this infinite phantom silk was obtained by the master of the Wuji Palace in the Imperial Palace and later given to Li Xinghen. Combined with Li Xinghen's invincible realm, this silk thread could burst out terrifying lethality. It could be said that no one in the entire limitless sky was more suitable for this treasure than Li Xinghen. Of course, this infinite phantom silk was naturally a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Just now, Han Fei's knife seemed to have swung the silk thread away, but in fact it just slashed out along the silk thread and made a sound of friction with the silk thread. The next moment, Han Fei tilted his head. Li Xingchen was about to make a move, when his face suddenly changed slightly. He left the big ship and raised his hand to punch. BM, there were two consecutive roars, and the sea was dented. Li Xingchen was surprised. Where did this attack come from? He didn't see Han Fei at all. Could this attack have appeared out of thin air? Even Bei Xianbing couldn't help but frown. Even she didn't know where the two attacks just now came from. One was a knife light, and the other was a soul-splitting knife. To put it bluntly, few people on the Wuji Palace's ships could block this attack. Fortunately, Li Xinghen took action. Otherwise, the others might not be Han Fei's match. Bei Xianbing said, "Finish it quickly. This kind of tentative attack can't dig out the opponent's strength." Li Xingqian nodded, and with a swish, he turned into an extremely fast ray of light. Fuse. Han Fei directly fused Little Black and Little White. The moment the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, he also activated his Dao. Bei Xian Bing suddenly stood up. Yin-yang divine eyes? At that moment, Han Fei raised his hand, and the blade of hope appeared in his hand. The two knives slashed again. This time, it was no longer a tentative attack, but an attack with the Dao. Wuji Storm. Li Xinghen appeared in midair, and around his body, tens of millions of threads between tangible and intangible rotated and intertwined. Bam boom! In the deafening explosion, Li Xinghen's body turned into golden threads of light, scattering in all directions. However, how could this escape Han Fei's eyes? Han Fei clearly felt the power of the fusion of spiritual beasts just now. In an instant, this person escaped instead of completely blocking Han Fei's attack. At this moment, the two yin-yang transmigration knives both reached the Wuji Palace's ship. When the golden light intertwined, Li Xinghen revealed his body, and he said solemnly, "Did you use a secret method?" Li Xinghen felt that Han Fei's strength was several times stronger than before. This kind of leap was too big. This meant that Han Fei's combat power at this moment was far beyond that of a king who had just entered the Pioneer Sea state. Li Xinghen thought it was a secret method, so he retreated. He was going to get the inheritance, not to fight a life-and-death battle at this moment. At this moment, Bei Xian Bing suddenly took action. He stretched out his hand and clenched, and the yin-yang transmigration knives in front of the ship shattered. Bei Xian Bing said leisurely, "Provoking a king is not under the protection of the martial emperor's city. Boy, who gave you the courage to pick a fight with the Wuji Palace?" First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter.